Hey, good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. A very warm welcome to this roundtable discussion titled as Inside the POPs Inventory, Lessons, Challenges, and Successes from the Global NIP Update. My name is Anastasia Vuchok, and I'm pleased to moderate today's discussion and conversation as a part of the Component 4 of Global NIP Update project funded by Global Environmental Facility. Project ID 10785, which is led by GGKP, Component 4. And as a part of this project, currently 32 countries currently working on their POPs inventories, though in different phases. The goal of this discussion is to create a space where parties can share real-world experiences in developing and managing their POPs inventories, and also highlighting the progress they have, challenges they have encountered, and good practices, if any, that are worth replicating. So we are very thrilled to welcome the countries who have kindly agreed to speak today. This is Peru, Montenegro, the Bahamas, Cote d'Ivoire, North Macedonia, Guyana, Armenia, and we also expected to have Malawi, Kenya, and Kazakhstan, but we haven't. We won't be able to hear from them due to some technical difficulties. So I'm also pleased to introduce our expert panelists, our technical experts who will provide reflections and suggestions throughout this discussion. This is Dr. Ramesh Kumar, Dr. Roland Weber, and Ms. Marcia Suazo. Thank you so much for joining. This session is intended to be more interactive, conversational, so we'll organize the discussion in 2 rounds of country interventions. Each will be followed by a brief expert panel reflection. And due to a strong interest in speaking today, we have a full agenda, so please be mindful of the time. So we kindly ask every country representative to try to keep their intervention within a maximum of 8 or 10 minutes. So we encourage you to focus on most relevant experience from your national inventory process. And this will ensure that we hear from everyone and keep the discussion a bit balanced. So once we start, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, including your name, your country you're coming from, organization, and if possible, please do mention which inventory you are currently working on, if you do work on the inventory at the moment. Also, please be kindly informed that this session is recorded and will be shared on our project website and Green Forum. And today we have 6 interpreters working, so they will ensure that interpretation into French, Spanish, and Russian languages is smooth. And therefore, we hope your participation and attendance will be convenient. So let us now begin with the first group of country speakers, and let's hear directly from Cote d'Ivoire, Professor Gustave Bedi from the Ministry of the Environment and Sustainable Development of Cote d'Ivoire. Over to you, Professor Bedi. We're happy to hear from you. Professor Bedi?
Voilà. Bonjour à tous. C'est bon, vous me voyez? Vous m'attendez? Anastasia?
Yeah, we can hear you.
OK. Bonjour à tous. Je vais parler en français, mais je pense que ma présentation sera en anglais. Alors, Anastasia, c'est vous qui projetez ou c'est moi qui projette?
If you could show the slides, Professor Bedi, do you want us to turn on the slides?
D'accord. Je ne sais pas. Je vais le faire ici, alors c'est mieux. Voilà. Est-ce que vous voyez?
Oui, très bien.
OK. Mais je vais... Excusez-moi, je vais je vais arrêter, je vais mettre la version anglaise et je vais parler en français. Sinon, en français, vous ne pourrez pas me suivre. En anglais, vous ne pouvez pas me suivre. Alors, je parle du temps. Oui. Bon, Anastasia, projetez la version anglaise. C'est encore mieux. Projetez la version anglaise.
Yes, just 1 second. And Karen or James, could you please turn on the slides if possible for Côte d'Ivoire? Just 1 minute, colleagues. We are waiting for the slides to come. Just 1 second, and I hope you can see the screen. Thank you, James.
Yes.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, il a été demandé à la Côte d'Ivoire de présenter les défis et les identifications des meilleures pratiques en matière d'élaboration, surtout pour l'Afrique francophone.
Particularly for French-speaking Africa,
qui sont impliqués dans cette mise à
that
jour
are involved in this
du plan national de
update
mise en œuvre de la Convention de
of
Stockholm.
the
Alors,
national
pour le plan,
implementation
next.
plans. So
Pour
with
le
regard
plan,
to the plans,
next.
next slide.
Voilà, donc j'aurai une introduction brève,
So
puis j'aurai
this
aussi
will
une
be a
conclusion
brief
brève.
introduction
Mais ce que
and
vous
a
nous
brief
avez demandé de
conclusion,
chercher,
but
c'était les 4 points.
in between, as you
Comment
asked,
faciliter
we will address
l'apprentissage,
4
comment
major
relever les
points. So
défis,
how to facilitate the
comment
peer-to-peer
améliorer les
learning,
connaissances
addressing
techniques
the
et
challenges,
comment
and how
renforcer
to
la
improve
collaboration
technical
régionale et
knowledge, as
mondiale.
well as strengthening
Alors,
of regional
sur
and global
l'introduction,
collaboration. So
je
of
dirais
course,
simplement
to
que
my introduction, I will say
l'inventaire
simply
des polluants, next,
that, next slide please,
l'inventaire des polluants organiques persistants, que ce soit en Côte
the
d'Ivoire
inventory of
ou dans la sous-région
POPs inventories
africaine
in Ivory
francophone que je
Coast
connais le mieux,
and
ça constitue
French-speaking
un enjeu crucial
Africa
dans le cadre de la mise
really is a
en
critical
œuvre de la
issue
Convention de Stockholm.
in
Et malgré les
implementing the
efforts
Stockholm
déjà déployés,
Convention.
les pays font face
So
à quelques
despite
défis qui entravent
efforts
encore la
already
collecte
made,
et
countries
la mise à
do
jour de
face
ces données.
challenges that hinder the
Mais
collection
ces obstacles
of
allant
data
de
and as well
l'information
necessary
à la
updates.
collaboration avec le secteur
In
privé
addition to
souligne
that,
l'importance
barriers
d'une
ranging
approche
from
qui sera donc
access to
systématique.
information, collaboration
Donc,
with
dans
the
cette
private sector
présentation,
has
nous
underscored
avons
the importance of a
identifié
systematic approach. As
et
such, we
adopté des
have
meilleures pratiques
identified and
et à
adopted
partir de là,
best
il sera
practices,
donc
and
possible
from there,
d'améliorer
we see
significativement
how we can
la collaboration
significantly
extérieure et
improve
intérieure,
the
puis
internal as well as external
l'efficacité
collaboration, as
de
well as
l'élaboration des inventaires et
the
de garantir
effectiveness of
une gestion
preparing
plus
these
efficace
inventories
des polluants
toward a
organiques
more
persistants
effective
dans nos pays.
management of POPs in our countries.
En ce qui concerne comment faciliter
With regard
l'apprentissage
to
entre pays, next,
facilitating peer-to-peer learning, next slide, please.
nous sommes partis du fait qu'il y
We
a un centre régional qui
started
existe
at
qu'on
a
appelle le
point
Centre
of
régional des Bâles
work
et de
of
Stockholm pour
the
l'Afrique francophone,
regional
qui a mis en
center
place un comité
for the
directeur qui est composé donc du
Stockholm
Bénin,
Convention,
de la Côte d'Ivoire, du Sénégal et de Djibouti.
comprised of a steering
Et ce
committee
centre
of
a
4
permis de
countries,
mettre en
Benin,
place un
Ivory
groupe
Coast,
WhatsApp
Senegal, and
qui est donc créé
Djibouti. We
et
created
qui
a
permet
WhatsApp
de
group
faire l'échange
that
direct
allows us
entre ces
to
pays
have
qui sont
direct
concernés par la mise en
exchanges
œuvre
among the
par la
countries
mise
that
à jour du
are
PNN. Il y a 6
involved
pays.
in
Il y
the
a le
update
Burundi,
of the NIP.
Madagascar,
We have
Cameroun,
Burundi,
Côte
Cameroon,
d'Ivoire,
Ivory Coast,
Sénégal et le Togo.
Senegal, and
Alors,
Togo.
la Côte d'Ivoire fait partie du comité
Now,
directeur.
Ivory Coast is
Et à
part
ce
of that
titre-là,
steering
moi,
committee,
je représente mon pays dans ce
and
comité
I represent
et j'ai été
my
nommé par le
country on that
centre
committee. I was
régional comme point
nominated
focal
by the
de
regional
la
center
mise
as a focal
en,
point
de la
for
mise à jour des
the
PNN dans tous ces pays
NIP
qui sont membres
updates
du centre.
in all of these countries that
partir de
are
ce moment,
members of the center.
Lorsque
So
il y a un problème qui
from that
surgit
point,
ou
whenever
un
there's
pays
a
qui est
problem
en
that
retard sur une
arises
information,
or a country
j'ai
that
donc la
may
charge de
be
discuter
behind
avec ce
in
pays
terms of data
pour porter
collection, I
l'information
have a
juste.
responsibility to
Et en troisième
rectify
point,
and to provide
nous avons tous
assistance
les
to bring
webinaires
that country up to
GGKP
speed.
qui nous ont
We
permis de nous former
also
et
have
nous
been able to benefit
sensibiliser
from the
et
GGKP
d'asseoir un
webinars,
bon
which
inventaire.
have allowed for
Next
grant
slide.
dissemination through different colleagues.
On nous
Next
a
slide.
demandé de relever les défis et de trouver
So
des
we've been
solutions.
asked to highlight
Évidemment,
the
au
challenges
cours de ce
and
PNL,
some of
nous
the
avons
solutions.
constaté
So
beaucoup de lacunes dans la
we
collecte
have collectively
et nous avons eu
noted
des
gaps
obstacles
in terms
et
of
des
data
contraintes.
collection,
Mais
as well
avec une
as
approche
obstacles and
bien structurée
resource
des défis
constraints. But
à
with
relever,
the
nous
approach,
avons
very structured
réussi
approach that we
à
have to the
pouvoir
challenges,
mener
we have
ce
succeeded in
PNN à bon port. Next
actually
slide.
carrying out this NIP update. Next slide.
Alors, les défis, il y en a plusieurs.
So in terms
Il y a
of
les
the
défis
challenges, there are several.
généraux
General challenges,
qui,
I would
pour
say,
l'inventaire des POP,
that with
il y a
regard
le
to
premier
the
défi,
POPs
c'est la
inventory,
collecte
the
des
first
données et
challenge
accès à
is, of
l'information.
course, the data collection
Pour
and
pouvoir lever ce défi,
access to information.
il fallait
And
donc
how do we address this?
créer d'abord
We
que les
created,
pesticides, vous avez
first
le
of all,
comité
for the
pesticides que nous
pesticides, we have
consultons.
a pesticide committee
Pour
with
les
which we
déchets, vous
consult
savez maintenant que
with regard
déchets
to the
tirés
waste,
par
because as
balle
you know,
et Stockholm
the
à cause des
waste
polluants
coming
organiques
under
persistants qui peuvent être dans les déchets. Donc, il y a un comité de
convention.
notification des déchets
So we
qui est créé en
have
Côte
a
d'Ivoire
waste
que nous consultons.
notification committee created in
Nous
the
avons
Ivory
mis en
Coast,
place un suivi des données de la
and we
douane
put in
sur
place
les pesticides. Tout rentre par le
a
port d'Abidjan et
monitoring
contrôlé
group
par la douane.
looking
Je pense que c'est
specifically
ce qui se fait
by
aussi dans
at
les pays qui
customs
sont
data,
en bordure de mer. Donc, nous
particularly
avons les
with
données de la
countries
douane
that have a
sur
coastline.
les pesticides, les
And so they're looking
D3E.
specifically
Et
at
nous avons une
pesticides,
structure sous tutelle du ministère qu'on appelle le CIAPOL,
and this
le
comes
Centre
under
ivoirien anti-pollution,
the
qui a les données
ministry, what we
aussi
call the
sur ces
CIAPOL.
déchets-là. Le seul problème qu'on a eu aussi, c'est le
The
problème de
only problem that we have
confidentialité et de
seen
méfiance.
is one
Parce
of
que dans le secteur
confidentiality
privé,
and
il
some
n'est pas
suspicion,
facile
because of
d'avoir
course
les
in the
données.
private sector,
Voilà, parce qu'ils
it's
sont
not
soumis à des
easy to
règles.
obtain data.
Alors, pour remédier à
Private
cela,
companies don't want to
nous
share their
avons
data.
créé donc des comités
So to get around that,
de
we've
gestion des
created
POP.
committees,
Depuis
the POP
2006, on a déjà un comité de gestion des
management
PNM.
committees since
2016,
2006,
il y a eu le même comité
and then in
de gestion des POP
2016,
pour le PNN
there
2016.
was a
Nous avons
committee
créé un comité de PCP.
overseeing
Nous avons créé un
the
comité de
PCPs in
projet
particular,
UPOPSI.
and then we
Et
created
à
another
travers
committee
tout
called the
ceci, nous
UPOPSI,
mettons en place un panel
Unintentional
qui a été
POPs
donc initié par
Committee,
le
as
GGKP.
well as
Et
an
à droite,
environmental
vous avez
panel, which
l'image
the
de
GGKP
ce
was
panel
instrumental in getting
où la dame
started.
qui est à l'extrême
And
gauche
then
représente
the
la
image
douane,
that you see, the
celle
lady
qui
on the
suit
left represents the
représente le ministère
customs.
de l'industrie,
She is
plutôt
from the Ministry of
le
Industry,
ministère de l'industrie du pétrole. Au
Industry
milieu,
and
c'est
Petroleum. In the middle of that
le ministère de
image you see on the
l'environnement.
screen, we
À
have
sa droite, vous avez
representatives from
le
the Ministry
ministère
of
de
the
l'industrie.
Environment.
Et
To
à
the
l'extrême
right,
droite,
there's
vous
a
avez le
representative
CIAPOL.
from the Ministry of
Donc, ces
Industry.
personnalités
And on the
sont
far right,
dans un
we
panel
have someone
pour
representing the
rendre
CFO.
compte
So these
des
persons form
quantités de
a
POPs qu'il y a dans
committee,
leur institution, de telle
multi-sectoral
sorte
committee,
qu'on puisse avoir les mêmes valeurs
so that we can
quand on va
all work with
décrire
the same values
les
and
inventaires du PNN.
principles when
Donc,
we're
ça, c'est
creating
un outil que nous avons
the
beaucoup utilisé
NIPS. So
pour
that's a
pouvoir
tool that we have
rationaliser la
used
collecte des données.
to
Next
rationalize
slide.
data collection. Next slide, please.
Le deuxième défi, ça a été la coordination institutionnelle. Donc, il fallait
The
mettre en
next
place un
challenge we
comité
found
qui
is
regroupe toutes les
institutional
institutions qui sont
coordination.
impliquées
And
dans
so
la gestion
we
des polluants organiques persistants. Vous avez le
had
ministère de
to
l'Industrie, la Santé, l'Agriculture,
really work
le
towards
ministère
that coordination
halieutique,
between
le
or
ministère de la
among all these
Recherche,
different
les
ministries,
ONG,
Ministry of
le ministère de la
Industry, Health,
Justice,
Agriculture,
le ministère de
Fisheries,
l'Environnement, les
Research, as well as
municipalités
other
pour les
stakeholders
villes,
like
et
NGOs,
puis
the
le
Justice, the
ministère des Budgets et
Environment, the
Finances
different
et bien sûr
municipalities,
la
of course, the
douane.
Ministry of
À
Budget and
droite, vous avez une
Finance,
image
and of course,
qui réunit
customs. And
là
so
le
on the
comité
right, you have an image
des
of that
experts
committee, members of the
qui font
committee who
partie
would have
de
met
cette
and
coordination
who therefore form
interministérielle,
part of this
interinstitutionnelle.
interministerial committee.
Voilà, vous avez le troisième défi, c'est la mise à
So
jour et
that's
la
the
continuité des
third
inventaires. partir de ce moment, pour
challenge
qu'on ait
we've
cette
faced
quantité, nous avons pris des
in
experts
terms of updating the
nationaux,
inventory and the notion of
surtout, et le
continuity.
comité de
So
pilotage en appui, le
we
comité
put in place a
technique en
steering
appui,
committee
et vous avez le
with
renforcement des
other
capacités
committees
et
that
surtout
serve
le dialogue
as
national qui a mis en
advisory
place
support
à partir du GGKP, nous avons fait donc
with
les
national
diagnostics qui
experts,
nous ont permis
technical committee,
de
and again,
pouvoir
thanks to the
affermir ces
GGKP,
valeurs des
we've been
inventaires.
able to
Next
host
slide.
national dialogues. Next slide.
Il y a maintenant les défis spécifiques par type de
With
POP.
regard to
Voilà. Donc, pour
specific
les
challenges
PB2E, dans un premier
linked to
temps,
the POPs.
c'était pas
So
facile
in the first
parce que le
instance, it
manque
was not
d'informations sur l'âge des
easy
équipements
because there's
électriques et
such a lack,
électroniques
such a
d'occasion
gap
importés
in
qui rendait
information
difficile l'estimation.
that it was
Ensuite,
rather
vous avez
difficult
la
for us to make
déclaration
any kind of
administrative
estimations
pour les
or
véhicules en fin de vie aussi,
to start
qui rendait
logging
aussi l'inventaire
the presence
difficile.
of
Mais
POPs,
grâce
in
à nos
particular
experts nationaux
the
et à un
PVDEs.
formateur
But
qui est venu de
thanks
CRCB
to
à
our
F,
coordination
pour
and
la douane
to
aussi, qui nous a
an
donné
expert
ces
trainer
fichiers.
who was deployed
Vous
to
avez aussi la
assist us,
CICTA, dont
we
l'image est à
also
droite
were able
en
to
haut,
rely on support
qui est
from the
donc la
CICTA,
société d'immatriculation des
which
véhicules.
is
À partir de
a
là, nous
company
avons pu
that
avoir des valeurs
is
sûres.
responsible for
Vous avez aussi les
vehicle
préfaces.
registration.
Les
We also have
préfaces ne sont
the
pas produits en Côte
PFAS.
d'Ivoire. Ce sont des
PFAS are
produits
not
anti-incendie.
produced in
Donc, pour
Ivory
cela,
Coast.
nous
They are
avons visité les
imported into the
sociétés
country. And so we were
d'inspecteurs,
able
les
to
casernes
visit
sapeurs-pompiers,
the companies
et grâce aux
that
experts
import
nationaux et aux
fire
formateurs CRCB,
extinguishers,
nous avons eu
the fire
les informations
services,
justes
and those
qu'il fallait pour
entities that
pouvoir
are
chercher
bringing
les
in
données. À droite,
the PFAS
l'image
into the
du
country.
bas, c'est donc
And again, the
une
image on the
réunion
right
pour
bottom
former ici
is a meeting
aussi
where
les
you can
douaniers qui devaient
see
nous aider à pouvoir
customs officials
avoir les
who
données
helped
à
us
l'importation.
have access
Slide
to
suivant.
that importation data. Next slide.
Le défi sur les PCB. Le PCB aussi, c'était pas
Third
facile.
challenge,
Nous
again,
avons fait les,
PCBs pose
aussi
a
bien dans
particular
les autres
challenge,
pays, parce que ça,
not
on a eu
only
un
in
projet
Ivory Coast, but
régional
in neighboring countries.
piloté
And
par
so we
le
had a
CRCB
regional
et qui a permis de faire
project
l'inventaire. Donc,
which
nous
allowed
avions en
us
2006 déjà
to
des valeurs. Et
actually
puis en
conduct
2016,
this
nous avons complété
inventory.
ces valeurs-là avec le projet régional.
And
Mais
so thanks to that
il y
regional
a toujours des
project,
problèmes qui
we were
demeurent
able to
dans le
do an
secteur
update
minier que nous
of
n'avons pas pu
the
encore
inventories.
totalement
And
couvrir.
more recently, in
Lors de l'inventaire de
2023,
2023 qui est en
another
cours actuellement,
update which we
il y a
did,
toujours
but we
quelques
see that the
difficultés,
same challenges
mais nous
remain
sommes
in terms
rentrés
of
dans les sociétés
obtaining
privées
data,
pour
access to
pouvoir
data from
prendre
the private sector due to
l'information sur les
confidentiality issues.
transformateurs du
Any
secteur
kind of information
privé,
about
du secteur parapublic
the
aussi.
transformer
Voilà.
sectors, for
Donc,
example,
il y a une lenteur
that should
administrative
be
et nous y allons. Alors, les
parapublic,
sociétés qui nous aident,
and
c'est
therefore
la
we should have
compagnie
easier
ivoirienne
access, but it is
d'électricité,
still
la
very
compagnie
difficult. For
ivoirienne
example, we have to go
d'énergie,
through
les
the
sociétés privées,
Ivorian
les
uh,
sucreries,
power
les centrales
generation
thermiques
company,
d'Azito.
the sugar
Et sur
companies,
cette base-là, vous avez
and
donc les experts
based
nationaux
on
que
those
nous avons
different
recrutés
stakeholders,
et
we have
surtout
been
encore le
able to
formateur
recruit
CRCB
persons,
qui est
particularly
venu
from
en
the
renfort
public
pour nous donner
sector,
les
to
indications
help
nécessaires.
provide
En
the
plus de ça, nous
necessary
ne sommes pas inquiets
information to allow
parce
us
que
to
la Côte
update
d'Ivoire vient
the
de bénéficier
NIPS. Generally
d'un
speaking,
projet
we're not
PCB
too
phase
worried
2
because
qui va nous
we
amener
have
jusqu'en
benefited from our
2028
PCB
pour réduire au
project,
moins
a second
1000
phase of the
tonnes de
project that
PCB.
will allow us to
Next slide.
categorize at least 1,000 tons of
Pour
PCB
les
and allow us to
pesticides,
collect it. Next
aussi
slide.
bien pour les
So,
pays
with
de la Côte
regard to the
d'Ivoire et les pays
pesticides,
d'Afrique
again,
francophone,
for
où
Ivory
nous faisons
Coast
le
and
PNL,
for
vous
French-speaking
avez donc la
African
lutte contre la fraude
countries, this
transfrontalière
is a
qui continue.
common problem.
Il est très
Um,
difficile de pouvoir
it is very
identifier
difficult
les
to identify
pesticides POP
the
qui rentrent par
POPs
contrebande.
that
Voilà.
are
Donc,
coming in
cela est dû aussi parce qu'il y a un
illegally.
manque d'infrastructures
Of
adéquates pour le
course, there
stockage des
is a lack
pesticides.
of infrastructure
Néanmoins,
on the borders
vous avez le comité
in terms of
pesticides
being able to
qui nous
store
permet
pesticides that are seized even.
de recenser
So that
les
remains a
pesticides qui sont
difficulty.
homologués et
We may
qui
be
ne
able to
contiennent pas les molécules interdites par
trace
les
and
conventions,
document
qui est donc
those that are coming
basé
in
au
legally, but for
ministère de
anything that's coming
l'Agriculture.
in via
Et nous
contraband,
avons
it's
aussi le
impossible.
CropLife qui
So
nous aide,
we
les revendeurs,
have been working
la douane,
closely with
les
the pesticide
producteurs,
committee,
les
with a company
agriculteurs
called
et les
CropLife, of
sociétés
course, with
phytosanitaires. Et nous avons des
producers,
sociétés qui sont sur
farmers,
place
companies
qui dépendent de
involved in the
l'agriculture qu'on appelle l'ANMADER.
phytosanitary
Alors, à
sector.
droite de vous,
And
c'est
to the right again, that
l'image
image you
du comité
see
pesticide de Côte
is
d'Ivoire
the
qui permet
pesticide
d'homologuer
committee
les
of the
pesticides
Ivory Coast
et
that allows
qui
us to
sortent tous les arrêtés et les décrets qui
document
autorisent
the
les
pesticides coming
pesticides
in,
POPs en Côte
identify
d'Ivoire.
them.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
Alors, vous avez maintenant tout ce qui
So
est produits
here
organiques non intentionnels. Je pense
we
que là,
treat
nous
with
avons
all of
bien mené
the
l'inventaire.
unintentional POPs, and I think
L'inventaire
we've
marche bien. Nous avons
succeeded
identifié
in
les
having
10
a fairly
catégories de
complete
sources d'émissions renforcées.
inventory in
Les
terms of
institutions ont été
identifying the
coopératives
sources,
et nous avons
because
fait cet inventaire. Pourquoi?
we had really the cooperation
La
of
difficulté
those
venait du fait des
stakeholders.
entreprises
I think
industrielles
that
qui font de la fonte,
enterprises, those
du fer.
industrial
Voilà. Donc,
companies
nous avons réussi
working
à
in the
contrôler
steel
ce
sector, for
côté-là.
example,
Donc,
allowed us
on a maintenant
to
les
visit their
valeurs par
plants,
industrie.
and
À droite, c'est l'image
so we had
de
much easier
la
access
fonte
to
de la bonne ferraille pour faire
the information.
des
What
fers
you
à
can see in the
béton.
image,
Voilà. Donc, en
this
faisant des
is
fers à béton, cette industrie-là
steel,
dégageait des
and
DF dans sa cheminée.
these
Voilà. Donc, on a
industries
pu maîtriser ça. Et
have much
aujourd'hui, on
higher
peut savoir
emissions of
la quantité
unintentional
de
POPs,
DF
but
qu'il
we
y
have
a
been able
sur
to
le territoire
document
national.
this
Next
on
slide.
our national territory. Next slide.
Alors, au titre des meilleures pratiques que nous avons acquises
So,
pour
in
pouvoir
terms of
mener
best
bien
practices
cet inventaire,
that we have
voilà, vous avez
noted in
donc,
terms
grâce à la
of
formation
updating
de
the POPs
GGKP,
inventories,
beaucoup, formation aussi de
again,
CRCB,
thanks to the
des experts
GGKP,
nationaux, du formateur CRCB,
we
voilà,
have been able to
nous avons acquis
access
un certain nombre de pratiques
training, a great
que
amount of
nous allons vous
training,
partager ici.
training national
Next
experts,
slide.
and training of trainers. Next slide.
Premièrement,
First of all,
voilà. Premièrement, il fallait suivre les directives
we
internationales.
had to follow the
Ces directives,
international
vous les connaissez tous,
guidelines, and
nous
you
avons
all know
eu
them. I
raison.
don't need to repeat
Mais
what they
grâce
are.
aux
We all know what
indications,
those guidelines are. And so thanks to
no, it's not the good slide. Come, previous. Voilà, yes, thank you very much. Voilà, donc, donc vous avez donc les directives internationales
so
et tout
you
ça
have the
que nous
international
utilisons.
guidelines,
Je n'ai pas à les répéter, tout le
and
monde les
this
connaît.
is what
Mais à
we
cela, il faut
all are
ajouter
familiar
les
with. I'm not going
directives
to repeat in
des
detail
D3E
because you're all
et les
familiar with
directives
it.
des véhicules en fin de vie. Nous
But
sommes aidés par PNUE, GGKP et
the major
surtout les trucs de 2013. Il fallait
guidelines, of
identifier et
course,
impliquer les
the
parties
POPNI
prenantes. C'est ce que nous avons fait
guidelines,
par les comités de
directives,
pilotage dont je vous ai parlé.
plus
Voilà, tout
the
existe en Côte
committee
d'Ivoire et qui nous
which I
facilite
spoke about earlier.
l'inventaire.
We
Next
facilitate
slide.
the update of the NIP. Next slide.
Voilà, donc vous avez les méthodes de collecte de données multiples.
We also
Donc,
have
à part
various
les experts
data
nationaux que
collection
nous avons recrutés,
methods
qui
that
sont beaucoup
allow
plus
us
universitaires.
to
Voilà, pour
have
avoir les
more
données réelles. Nous
university,
avons
more
travaillé aussi avec les
academic
techniciens
type
du secteur,
data collection
des
techniques.
D3E, ou bien des POPs, ou bien des pesticides.
And
Voilà,
so
donc
we're
ces
able
comités ont
to
travaillé
gather
et
that
nous avons donc
information in a more scientific
l'inventaire
approach,
qui sort des
more
analyses
complete or
documentaires, mais nous
comprehensive
avons aussi
approach
l'inventaire
in
qui
terms
sort
of
des entrepôts, des magasins et tous ceux qui sont dans le
document
secteur.
analysis, as well as the site
Quatrièmement, il
visits.
fallait définir l'année de référence.
Fourth,
En 2016, quand nous avons fait l'actualisation du
best
PNL,
practice,
l'année de
when we did
référence a
the
été
last
2014.
update,
Cette année,
the previous
année de
date
référence
would have
a été
been
2022,
2014.
pour laquelle
Now we are
nous
able to
avons pu
use the base
avoir
year as
accès
2022,
aux
and so
données au niveau de la
we
douane,
had to have
aux données au
access
niveau de la
to
CIPA
customs
et au
data,
niveau
data
des
from the
autres institutions
SICTA,
qui fournissent
as
les
well as
données.
other institutions that
Next
provide base data. Next slide.
Next slide, yes. Intégrer les inventaires dans le plan national de mise en œuvre.
Another
C'est ce que
best
nous faisons
practice,
actuellement.
we were able to
Les
integrate
études
the
sectorielles ont
inventories
été faites par les experts
into
nationaux.
the NIP.
Ces études sont analysées par
And
l'expert
these studies
CRCB.
are
Et
analyzed
après,
by the
nous passons à la
CSCB
validation de ces études
experts. Then
sectorielles
we move to the validation phase,
pour
sectoral
pouvoir maintenant
validation
les
phase,
insérer dans
to
le
be
PNL
able
qui sera actualisé et qui
to
sera validé par
integrate this
toute la
data
nation dans un
into
atelier.
the
Donc,
NIP.
il est évident que ces données
So
doivent être
obviously
correctes,
this
doivent être
data
validées et
will
insérées
be
dans le
correct,
PNL.
will be validated,
Il
and
fallait
then
identifier les secteurs
integrated
prioritaires.
into the NIP.
Ça,
And
c'est
so
la
we
même
had to
chose.
identify priority
Aujourd'hui, au niveau de
sectors.
l'État, au niveau de
And
nos États,
today, on
c'est
the
de
level of
réduire la
our different
pollution de l'air.
states,
Voilà,
we
parce qu'on ne sait
want
pas
to
de quoi meurent les
reduce
gens. Il
air
faut déjà
pollution.
réduire la pollution de l'air.
That's the
Il
objective.
faut
We
réduire
need
la
to
pollution
reduce
des
the air
écosystèmes
pollution,
aquatiques et
reduce
surtout
the marine
réduire
ecosystems as
la
well,
pollution de l'environnement.
aquatic ecosystems,
Voici
and of
les
course reduce the
priorités
pollution
vraiment
impacts
actuellement de
on
notre
the
État
wider
et vers
environment.
lesquelles
That,
vont
or
ces
these are the
données que nous
priorities
recherchons
of
sur
the
le terrain
state,
et le plan
and
doit
this is
devoir
the data that we're
confirmer
seeking
ceci
when we
par
conduct
une lettre
on-the-ground
de consentement.
analyses.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Alors, notre collaboration avec la douane et
Our
les autres organismes, c'est
collaboration
très,
with
très important.
customs and
Vous ne
other
pouvez pas
national
avoir des
bodies is
données
very important. You
sur ce que
cannot
nous
have access
cherchons,
to
des
data
équipements, des
that
polluants
we are
et
looking
persistants,
for in
sans
terms
passer
of
par la douane.
equipment or
Voilà.
polluting
Donc, nous
equipment
sommes
without
toujours
going
en
through the
constante
customs authorities.
formation
And so
avec la
we
douane.
are
À
constantly
droite, vous
in
avez l'image
coordination
de la
and
douane
training with them.
ivoirienne
So the
qui
image
vient
that
de
you see
suivre
to the
donc
top
la
right,
formation.
this is the
Et à côté de
customs
cela,
authorities
nous
of
avons aussi
Ivory
des
Coast,
sociétés comme
just
l'ANARE,
after
dont l'image est juste en bas.
particular training
Voilà.
that was done.
C'est un secteur de
And the image at
l'électricité
the
qui
bottom,
nous aide beaucoup pour
that is
les
the state
PCB et tout le
agency
reste. Vous avez donc,
for
comme je vous ai
consumer
dit, les
affairs
SIAPOL
with
et les
regard to
SICA qui
electricity in
interviennent
particular.
dans ce inventaire. Next slide.
Next slide.
Alors, il fallait améliorer les connaissances techniques, les
We
ressources
also
et
had to
capacités
improve
limitées.
technical
Nous
knowledge
nous
along the
faisons ce
way
que nous
with
pouvons.
limited
Nous
resources.
n'avons
So we
pas
did
assez
what
de
we could.
moyens, donc
It's
avec ce
true we
que
don't have a
le
lot of
BRS, plutôt le
resources,
FEM donne,
but
nous travaillons
we
sur le
did as
terrain,
much
mais
as
nous
we could.
ajoutons
We
d'autres
work in
choses.
the field,
Voilà,
and
nous avons un site
in addition,
internet UPOPSI
we have
qui est
a
donc créé par la
website
Convention de Stockholm
which
dans ce
was
projet. Donc,
created
vous avez des
within the
informations dessus.
context of
Nous avons
this
aussi un
NIP
autre
update
site qu'on
project,
appelle le SRI, le système de remontée des incidents environnementaux,
and
qui est donc un système qui fait remonter
there's a system in
les
place
dangers qui sont liés à ces polluants organiques
to
persistants
flag
et à un certain
the
nombre de données. Nous avons
dangers,
aussi le
the
système de suivi
risks.
des données de la
We also
douane
have
qui permet à la douane de suivre
surveillance
les 2-3
system that
œufs
allows the
à l'entrée au
customs
niveau du port.
to monitor what's coming in
Mais au
through the
niveau des
ports.
analyses, nous sommes allés plus
With
loin.
regard
Aujourd'hui,
to the
nous
analysis,
consultons donc nous allons vers
we
l'équipement d'un laboratoire de
can
toxicologie qui va nous aider aussi
use
dans
laboratory equipment
les effets
for
néfastes de ces polluants.
toxicology
Mais
analyses that allows
pas
us
forcément
to
pour l'inventaire. Mais
identify
une fois que nous avons découvert,
the
nous pouvons
toxic
aller dans ce
substances.
sens. Next slide.
Next slide.
Alors, pour finir, donc, il y avait donc
So,
l'amélioration
in
de la collaboration
conclusion,
régionale et
as I
mondiale.
mentioned,
Je
we
vous ai
have a
dit
lot
tout à
of
l'heure, nous avons
coordination
notre
going
outil qui est
on with
puissant,
different
qui est
ministries.
CRCBAF,
We have
qui nous
the
permet de nous mettre en contact
CVF,
avec les informations réelles,
CRCBS
avec l'information
tool
dans le temps,
that allows
et
us
qui nous
to
aide à
exchange
donner les
messages in real
documents qu'il
time
faut pour
on that
faire
WhatsApp group.
la collaboration
We also have
régionale.
access to
Nous avons
GGKP
le
webinars
groupe WhatsApp dont
with
je
a
vous ai
wealth of
parlé.
information.
Et essentiellement aussi, vous avez les webinaires
And
GGKP qui nous aident beaucoup à avoir les
this
informations.
is a
Et pour
huge
cela, je voudrais dire
assistance
merci
for us to have
à
access to
CEST, son groupe
information.
avec Roland
And then this
Vepper, qui
photo
nous aide
below, as you see, it's one
sur
of
le
the
PNL.
conferences
Et
of
puis, vous
the
avez donc
Africa
la
Parties
conférence
Group,
des parties
the Conference of
que nous
Parties,
venons d'achever
the
aussi, où il y a
Africa
des
Group,
échanges là-bas sur les
which we
polluants et
recently
tout le reste
completed.
en Zambie très récemment. Donc, à droite, la première image,
On
c'est
the
les
right,
points focaux des
top
conventions
right,
qui avaient été invités
that's
à
an image
Dakar
of
pour échanger sur les
conference at
PCB, pour
Dhaka
faire
where
des
we were
partages
speaking
d'expériences
about
et tout le reste.
PCBs,
Et en bas,
sharing
vous avez la
our
photo
experiences,
de
and then to
Lusaka
the bottom,
qui a
like I
eu
said,
lieu
the
tout
photo taken
dernièrement.
in Lusaka
Next
at the
slide.
last COP. Next
Alors,
slide.
pour finir, je dirais donc
So,
que
in conclusion,
les dossiers
I
associés,
would
les défis
say
associés
that
aux inventaires des
the
POP en
challenges
Côte d'Ivoire,
associated with
comme dans les autres
POPs
pays
inventories
africains
in Ivory
francophones,
Coast,
dans le
as
cadre
in
de la
other
Convention de
French-speaking
Stockholm,
African
sont
countries
nombreux.
within
Mais
the
les
Stockholm
stratégies
Convention
mises en
are
place
numerous. But the
grâce au
strategies
CRCB,
that have been put in place
AF
thanks to the
et au pacte
CRCDS and the
permettent
parties
de les résoudre
make
afin
it
d'avoir un
possible
inventaire
to
sécurisé et fiable.
resolve the
Toutefois,
challenges and have
nous
a
sommes
secure and
toujours prêts
reliable
pour
inventory.
l'identification
Nevertheless,
et l'adoption des meilleures pratiques,
we
à nous
are always
proposer.
looking to
Ça pourrait nous
identify and to
faciliter
adopt
encore
best
plus
practices
l'élaboration
to
et la mise à
facilitate
jour
even
de
further
ces
the
inventaires.
development and update
Next slide.
of these entries. Next slide, please.
Je vous remercie.
So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Bedi. That was a very insightful presentation from Côte d'Ivoire. And as I understand, most of our countries are struggling with, as you mentioned, Professor Bedi, during your presentation, that data collection, data sensitivity is quite challenging, and also collaboration between different stakeholders and managing and juggling between ministries and the private sector remains very challenging for most of our countries. Thank you very much, Professor Bedi, for sharing this. And I think we do have our speaker from Kenya joined us recently, Mr. Edward Njuguna. Edward, by any chance, would you be able to jump in and speak a bit about your experience with the POPs inventories in Kenya, or do you want to skip and speak later?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much
No, Edward.
for this webinar. As you know, we're in the process of updating our NIB through the UNEP-funded NIB update process. So previously, I was not part of the team that did the inventories during the previous NIB update, but for this one, I'm coordinating the NIB update process, and we have already identified institutions or other stakeholders that we will use in to take inventory of these POPs. Yeah, in our discussions, we find there will be some challenges, especially in the collection of data, especially for POPs in products and this kind of very high. I'll call it very detailed data for the POPs. So it's a journey that we are about to begin, and I think spoke to Professor Weber and yourself and the GGKP team. We'll be in touch because it's a process that we are starting, and we hope that we will be consulting and also the wider platform that the Green Forum will be using also that to try and learn from other countries that have participated or have done the inventories of POPs. So for us, we look forward to working with everyone and learning more. So that's all I can say for now. Yeah, maybe I can make other comments later as we proceed. Thank you very much for.
Thank you very much, Edward. And please do stay with us on the panel as we'll be having a couple of questions soon. So now, since we heard from our colleagues from Kenya and from Côte d'Ivoire, and Côte d'Ivoire is progressing quite fast with the inventories, and Kenya is initiating their inventories under this project. So maybe it's good to invite our colleagues from the expert panel to share their insights or probably any comments that they will have to the interventions from the Côte d'Ivoire or Kenya.
Who may go first?
Anastasia.
Hello, and we have Marcia, and we have Dr. Roland Weber and Dr. Ramesh Kumar here on the expert panel. So please feel free to jump. And I think Marcia wanted to go first. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm going to change to my Spanish channel right now, okay? Because I'm more fluent in my language, so excuse me.
Sure.
So,
in English. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bien, así que aparentemente
Okay, so apparently
los países están mostrando los mismos
countries,
retos, ¿no? Y
they're
anoté
really
algunas cosas que
seeing
mencionaba nuestro colega
these
de
challenges
Côte
that we have, as our
sobre
colleagues from Côte
todo
d'Ivoire mentioned,
hablaba
and above all,
de la
we
dificultad
have
de
this
acceder a
challenge, this
información, ¿no?
difficulty
Bases de
in
datos
terms of the
incompletas, o
recollection
quizás la
of
información
data.
existe, pero la
Because of the
calidad no es
information
tan
that exists,
buena,
we need to
o la
understand
información existe,
that
pero está
sometimes the quality
incompleta,
is
¿no?
not so good,
Entonces, ese es
and we
uno de
know
los
that
grandes
it's a
retos
difficult
también que muchos
process,
de
and
los
so this is
países
definitely
están
one of the challenges that
afrontando.
we
Luego
experience as well, that many
está
countries are
el
experiencing.
involucramiento de los actores clave,
And
cómo
we
lograr ese
understand also the
involucramiento, ese
participation
compromiso de los
of
actores,
all
¿no es cierto?,
important
en los
actors
grandes retos.
and stakeholders. We are
Y
all
el
facing these
siguiente gran
challenges.
reto, y que se repite mucho, es
And it
el
is a challenge that
involucramiento de la
is
empresa
faced by
privada.
many. This
Mencionaba nuestro colega
involvement
que
of
muchas
private
veces, bueno,
industry as well.
aún hay mucho
we
hay mucha
understand that
desconfianza por parte de la
there's a
empresa
lack of
privada.
trust,
Entonces,
there's a
¿cómo
lack of
podemos superar
confidence
estos
in
retos, no? Creo que el tema de
in
las
this
bases
private
de datos
sector.
lo
And
vamos a
so
seguir viendo, el tema de la
we
disponibilidad de
have to
información
see
lo vamos a seguir
how
viendo a medida que
we
los
can
países vayan
continue to
presentando.
improve
Pero
it because
sí
these
quisiera
countries are
compartir
experiencing
ciertas
this
buenas
difficulty. And so I
prácticas que se han
wanted to
implementado en otros países.
talk
Y
about these
quizás no
best
buenas prácticas,
practices,
sino que
and we
estrategias,
understand
¿no?
that these best
Por ejemplo, en
practices,
el
not
caso de
truly
los actores
strategies, but
clave,
good
sí se ha
practices. And
visto
so
que
this
se
collaboration
invierte mucho
between interested
esfuerzo
party
y energía
stakeholders, and we need the
en
effort, there's
conformar el
energy,
mecanismo y en lograr
and to
la
have these
participación de estos
mechanisms in
actores. Entonces,
place,
¿cómo podemos
the
facilitar eso en un
participation
futuro?
of these
Y creo que
stakeholders so
este
that we can move
esfuerzo
towards the
debe
future. And so
llevarse
this
a
effort
una
must
formalización del
be
mecanismo. Tenemos que
brought in a
legalizar
way
ese
so that we can
mecanismo,
form these
que quede un
mechanisms.
compromiso legal, que estos
We
actores
need
se
to have
vean
this
comprometidos
commitment, this dedication,
legalmente
this
en
engagement
apoyar los futuros,
to be able to support
la
the building
futura
of the future
implementación,
and the future
actualización de los
implementation
inventarios y del Plan Nacional de Implementación.
of
Entonces,
these
por ejemplo, en muchos
NIP updates
países
and
en
these
América
processes.
Latina,
And
yo
so
trabajo con
many
la
countries
región
in
de
Latin
GULAC,
America and in the
que han
GULAC region,
formalizado sus mecanismos.
they
¿Cómo lo han
have
hecho?
also formalized
Bajo
their
la sombrilla de una
mechanisms.
Comisión Nacional del
You
Ambiente,
know, we have
se han
the
creado
creation of
grupos de trabajo.
environmental groups,
Puede
we have
ser grupo de
working
trabajo para
groups.
la
So we
actualización
have
del
working
PNI
groups for the
o
PIN
grupo de
updates.
sustancias químicas.
We have
Entonces,
working groups
estos grupos se
for the
mantienen
chemical
activos porque la
products.
comisión
And
pasa
so they are
activa.
active.
Se
Yes,
crean
the
estos
commission is
grupos y
active.
se
They
definen sus
create these groups,
obligaciones. Y
and
una de esas es apoyar el proceso
we
de
understand that their
actualización del
job is
inventario.
to
Entonces,
work
esto hace
to
mucho más fácil
support
su
these
involucramiento.
processes.
Y una
And
vez que
so we
ustedes
need to
quieran hacer la
facilitate this
convocatoria,
involvement and engagement.
ellos pues se ven obligados a participar.
And so
Tienen
this
una
is how
no
really we
tienen
would
opción, ¿no? Entonces,
improve participation,
a mí me
having
parece
the
que esta es
collaboration.
quizás,
And
nosotros queremos que las cosas sean de forma voluntaria, pero quizás
so we
es
understand that it also has
necesario
we need to see their will
crear mecanismos legales
to be able
para
to create
lograr
these
el
legal
compromiso
mechanisms
y la participación
to be
de
able
los
to
actores,
improve
lastimosamente, en
participation
algunos
of
países no
all
es. Con
important
respecto al
actors
involucramiento de
in
la
this
empresa
process.
privada,
And
creo que también
for
hay
the
ciertas
private
estrategias que se han
industry,
implementado a
we
nivel de algunos
understand that
países del
yes, there
GRULAC,
are some
y creo que
strategies that have
Perú va a
been
hablar un
implemented
poco
in
de
certain
esto.
GRULAC regions, and of course in
Y son
Peru as well.
aprendizajes, ¿no? Con la empresa
And
privada
it's a
tenemos que
learning
ser un poco
process, not so?
cuidadosos.
We
Y
have
lo
to
que se
understand
ha
that they
hecho
need to be
es un
cautious,
abordaje
yes,
distinto. Creo
and
que otro de los uno de los
each
países
region or
participantes
country will have
lo
a
van a
different
mencionar,
approach, not
pero sí
so?
creo que el abordaje con la empresa
And
privada debe ser
so
temprano,
with
¿no?
private
Tenemos que
industry,
visitarlos y quizás no
we need to be able
directamente
to visit them.
tenemos que visitar
We
las
have
cámaras de
to
comercio, que son los que
be
agrupan
able
a las
to
empresas, ¿no?
visit all
Tenemos que
the
acercarnos
trade
a
centers
ellos,
as well,
sensibilizarlos y
so that
lograr
we
su
can also make them
involucramiento.
more aware,
Entonces,
improve
hemos visto
awareness. And we have also seen
si
that
hacemos bien el trabajo de sensibilización,
we have
logramos su
done great work with
compromiso
regard to the improvement of
y por lo
awareness,
tanto su
yes,
apoyo,
and
¿no? Entonces, por ejemplo,
involvement,
en el
and we
caso de
have been able
Perú,
to
que quizás
see
Fernando y
support
Marcela lo
grow,
mencionen,
just like in
lo que se
Peru,
hizo fue
as you
acercarse
mentioned.
a la Cámara de Comercio de
With
Industrias
regard to
del
the
Perú
trade center
y se
for
logró
Peruvian
con ellos el
industry,
apoyo en tanto
we
en
were
la
able to work
invitación
with them
a
to
las
get
empresas
support. We
privadas.
invited
Otra
private
ventaja también es
companies,
realizar las
and we have
reuniones
other
en estos espacios que
advantages of
pertenecen a
this
la empresa
support,
privada,
because
por
being in
ejemplo,
the
en este caso
spaces
el
with them,
taller de
being able to
lanzamiento se
collaborate and
hizo
discuss with them,
en
see the
las
tools that they
instalaciones
used,
de la Cámara
see
de
the
Comercio.
mechanisms that they
Entonces,
used, and
ellos se
have
sienten
this
que están en
relationship
su casa,
with
¿no?
the
Se
trade
sienten que están en
market.
ese
And
ambiente, se
so
sienten de cierta forma protegidos. Entonces, creo
this
que
is
también
how
esa es
we
una
can
buena
see
estrategia para
how to
trabajar con la empresa
also
privada.
use these
Y lo
mechanisms to
otro
be
que
able
logró
to
Perú, que
work
quizás
towards
lo
a better
mencionó
future
también
as well. And
Fernando
this
y
is
Marcela,
what is happening
es
in Peru as
que
well,
el contacto directo no
as they
sea a través
mentioned.
del
And so
Ministerio
this
de Ambiente,
direct
sino
contact
a través de la
with these
autoridad
environmental groups
que
as well, with the
tiene poder sobre la
authorities and
empresa privada.
relevant
En este
bodies
caso puede ser el Ministerio de
and the
Comercio,
private
el Ministerio de
sector
Economía
with the trade
o de
centers. This is
Industria,
how
¿no?
we
Cada
improve
país tiene
the economy.
diferentes normas para estos ministerios. Entonces,
And so,
creo que en el caso de la empresa privada, esta es una
and so
estrategia muy
yes, I would
interesante
like to
y un
say that this
abordaje
is a very
interesante.
interesting
Es
strategy, being able to
llegando ellos
collaborate
a
with the private
través de
sector.
sus cámaras de
And
comercio, ¿no? Que
And this is
para
how we would
ellos
be able to reach
es un ambiente
the
mucho más
trade industry
seguro.
as well. And this
Ellos
would
tienen
make it
total
more
confianza en estas cámaras.
safe and be
Esto
able
es por
to
ahora.
increase
Tenía
confidence.
muchas más anotaciones, pero
And,
sí, más adelante, pues creo que
and this
habrá
is definitely,
oportunidad
as
de
I said, how we
mencionarlas.
would be able
Gracias.
to move forward. This is the opportunity. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. That's indeed a very complicated process involving the private sector and ensuring that everyone is very collaborative. And I can see on the chat that our colleagues from Cameroon, they also mentioned that they also had challenges of confidentiality and mistrust. But their solution approach was that they developed a sort of and signed some confidentiality. I understand it's a sort of NDA with the relevant enterprises, private sector companies, to ensure them that the information that they collect will be used for the purpose of the NEEP update and nothing else. And that's actually a very nice solution to bring the private sector to collaborate, I guess. Thank you so much, Cameron, for sharing, and thank you, Marcia. And let us quickly move to Dr. Roland Weber or Dr. Ramesh Kumar. Any of you who want to comment on the add something to Marcia's
from Africa?
comment?
Yes. So I mean, the challenges about imports, Professor Bedi mentioned. At least for some of the goods, you have the data in the UN Comtrade database, for example, for electronics. And I mean, we have developed with Nigeria and Zambia a kind of methodology to generate the data there, and then from there to model data in material and substance flow analysis, and we can share the case studies. I agree that some of the imports are not recorded. For example, we found in Nigeria that actually the imports of electronic waste was not recorded in UN Comtrade database, but there had been then another project where they looked into detail about imports at the port, and finally also Nigeria could then develop these kind of data. One thing about imports of chemicals and mixtures, and the question to Professor Bedi, one good approach is to establish the global harmonized system for hazard classification and labeling of chemicals. Yeah, it's also included in the framework on chemicals. But I know that in Africa, many countries does not have the GHS system yet. Yeah, so this is let's say one recommendation also to get a better idea, especially about imports of chemicals and mixtures. One thing you mentioned about ensuring continuity and comparability of data, and that this is a challenge. Actually, when you consider over time the inventories, normally they should get better. It's also included in the guidance on quality assurance and quality control. So if you take care of your former inventories and that the knowledge is kept, normally you can improve gaps, you can erase mistakes, and this would be one recommendation. Of course, often you have a change in personnel because yes, somebody retired, for example. So here, what is very important is to keep the knowledge, and if such a person leaves a position, to either let's say transfer the knowledge to a new person coming into the team, or keep in contact that when you have the next inventory, that you can get a briefing for the person who is taking up that topic. Then you mentioned about UPOPs and dioxins and lack of activity rates for some sources. Also there, I mean, I agree, for a complete dioxin inventory, it's a huge amounts of activity rates which you need. But there is also, when you, let's say, prioritize for the major sources, that at least for major sources like incinerators, metal industry, open burning, or certain chemical imports, that especially for those, let's say, you take some time to get good activity rates, while for others where, let's say, the dioxin emission is not really relevant, in respect to amount like the transport sector or smoking, so that for these sectors then maybe you do not take too much time for that to get the data. Also, you mentioned the limited analytical capacity, and yeah, Professor Bedi, I mean, since 3 years we have this project. I completely agree, and I understand the challenges. But I think here it would be good to make maybe, for example, in Africa, really a good network. And we have some laboratories which can analyze POPs. And there are, let's say, research groups interested in developing capacity in Africa on POP analysis. Actually, Anastasia is planning another roundtable about POP research later in May or June. Maybe Anastasia, you can mention it. Yeah, so I completely agree that there is much room for improvement. But I see that Africa step by step is increasing its capacity. Recently in a UNIDO project, 3 laboratories have been capacitated to analyze UPOPs. And there I think that especially networking and communication is very important. And here I really like your approach of making a WhatsApp group with all your French countries and exchange information, exchange probably information about what worked and what does not work. So I think this is a very good way to move forward. On Kenya and the Kenya input, you highlighted about the challenge of POPs in products. I completely agree. Yeah, without labeling, we hardly understand what POPs come in products into countries. But and also, you know, we do not know which television has a POP as flame retardant and which one does not. So for this, in the inventory guidance documents, we have developed impact factors that you can at least do a kind of tier 2 inventory here with the impact factor, and also for chlorinated paraffins, which are now so relevant because they have such high production volume. We have developed a case study about major products imported here for Nigeria and how to do rough initial inventory on these imports and the short and medium chain chlorinated paraffins, and I can share this in the chat as a link, that publication. Yeah, back to you, Anastasia.
Thank you very much, Roland. I guess most of the aspects of our presenters were covered. Maybe we would have some comments from Dr. Ramesh Kumar from NERI.
Yeah.
If any.
Yeah. Am I audible?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you. So from my perspective, Professor Bedi, am I pronouncing it correctly? Okay. He has mentioned a lot of challenges. I suppose I am also facing all these challenges, whatever has been listed by Professor, but there are also way out to at least to tackle those challenges. The first and foremost thing is challenges in the data collection and access to information. Normally, in most of the developing countries, including India as well as countries in economies of transition, national databases are not so much accurate. So we need to rely on multiple databases. For example, we always combine the data which is available in India from the Indian Ministry of Commerce as well as Chemicals, plus UN Comtrade website. So we always have a comparative approach between these two databases, both the Indian government maintained one as well as the UN Comtrade. A lot of times we find discrepancies between a particular year. So then we will again check it with the actual data which is collected from the industries. So this way we can figure out about the accuracy of the data. So this is one of the approach we use in our NIP update process. Then inter-institutional coordination as well as networking. It is one of the foremost thing in the LEAP update process. Then inventory update and continuity. Yeah, Dr. Roland has already covered this. Then UPOPs emission based upon the UNEP toolkit. Right now, only dioxin and furans are covered under this toolkit approach. Remaining, we are developing the country-specific emission factors. So, but that is one of the very tedious thing. So there are ways out. We need to find out the best possible way to get the accurate data as possible. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramesh. And indeed, there is no exact answer on how to do it. It's always, balancing between a lot of resources and a lot of sources for data. As you and Dr. Roland as well mentioned, the UN Comtrade database could be one of the solutions, but also the national sources of data. And I see that some colleagues mentioned that most of the problems are due to the confidentiality policies of the industries, and they don't want to share the data with the scientists or the NGOs or the governments for the fear of being identified as polluter. Yeah, but there must be a government representative body with whom the industry may be fearlessly sharing this data, which is still a challenging thing, I understand, for everyone. So thank you so much to our experts, and let us move to the LAC region. I guess we do have the representative from Guyana, and Guyana is not a project country of GEF 10785, but they kindly agreed to join to share their experience of Guyana. And I know that Guyana has already developed their NEP and submitted the NEP. So we have Mr. Basuda Dwaka, who will be sharing his insights from Guyana. And Basuda, can you hear us? Mr. Dwaka, are you with us? Okay, I see Mr. Dwaka is with us, but probably he will join us a bit later. Or Mr. Dwaka? Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
Do I need to share my screen?
Yes. Okay, we can see your screen.
Okay. Morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you our experience here. To go back a bit, our first NIP was completed in 2012 in Guyana. I'm reporting on the second NIP that was completed in 2022, roughly. We deal with 2017. We undertook the NIP as part of the Stockholm Convention obligation. The scope, as we know, is to look at the POPs, pesticide, the industrial POPs, the EU POPs, the other legacy POPs, etc. The purpose of the inventory, as we all know, is the compliance, the risk, and informing on national policies. Well, for our end, we had some ideas of what was coming, some of the issues that we had from the previous NIP. So we anticipated the challenges. So from our NIP expert, which happened to be Roland, he advised that we actually identify all the possible stakeholders, the critical stakeholders, so that we can move early to address some of the issues. We established during, I think this part of the slide is a bit early, of the technical and the national working group, as we heard the others are doing. So we identified the templates and the guidance documents, the latest one, the best suited one, and the NIP expert was top ranking in guiding us through that there. So we knew we were dealing with the best at it whilst we prepared to undertake the inventories. We had support from BCRC. Some of the areas they assisted us with is guide us based on their experience with the others. We reach out to the previous inventory developers. We bring them on board so we can understand their issues, where they went wrong, what are their problems, where they advise, and the data that they had for the 4 inventories that were developed there served as a backup for us. In the case of the UPOPs, there were some changes in the inventory and the emissions, etc. So we had to revise that to bring it up to date and then do ours. From that, we had an inventory development workshop where all the stakeholders are on board so that they could understand what the importance, what data do they have. It's an open discussion. So we know where we're going to get that data, and the technical working group was created using the output that came out from that along with the national thing. To go on, what did we learn from that? You had an enhanced interagency collaboration. Well, in Ghana, we have a pesticide board where we have all the data relative to pesticides because of the licensing process. The EPA on the toxic area with the pesticide board, they cover that. The Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Local Government for the waste disposal process. Customs, as we heard previously, they have to be on board because things could beat the system, but they would record it. In the case with the PFOS, the fire services was on board. Now, I have here one of the private sector agency or public sector, if you want to call it, because it's the Ghana Sugar Corporation. In the 70s, they were the only people, because of the lack of foreign currency, they were the only company was importing chemicals. So the records there, and they quickly had all the previous POPs, they put it together, and the chemical companies, they were on board because it's all the buy-in was there. So leading from that, we had a strong coordination. With the communication was well, yes, we utilize all communication, possibly email, WhatsApp, etc. The ownership, everybody had the ownership because it was their responsibility to manage any particular area, and they wanted all the help that they could get. If the interagency people are on board and assistance is coming, they wanted to be part of it. So the data that we received was top quality data. It was data current, data originating from their annual reports, what is coming through the thing, so we could check it all around. Yes, we had to get some data from the UN Comtrade for some of the areas, but eventually those data, based on our experience, some companies are starting to get that on board so they could have it their way. So technically, we had a minimal disruption of the flow of the inventories. We were able to work smoothly to achieve the final objectives. What were the key lessons from our experience? Our planning, which we spent a lot of time on, multiple meetings, led to the smooth execution of having our data, putting it together, etc. The stakeholder identification, the mapping gear, we had clear communication, and that is very essential if you want to go forward. To those people who are working now in the inventory, you need to take stock of that. National data sources and network, you need to identify them and get them on board so that the data comes from them to you. The regional cooperation and the technical guidance, it was very invaluable for us to see, learn from others' experience so that we didn't have to make that same mistake. As it said, strong inventory is equal to effective ops management. Well, everything was not perfect. We had some challenges. I've identified them according to some areas: institutional and capacity. The pesticide board came into being around 2000, so there was a lack of historical data. It was placed in different ministries. I think it was 4 areas, and over time it went missing. Gaisuku had some issues. They have some of the data, but it was all what was available at that point. So the historical data was lacking. Record keeping, as you said, is poor. Technical and laboratory facility, individuals as well as the labs is non-existent. Now we have a lab that could assist, whether it's covering all the POPs or some of the POPs, the capability will have to be incorporated. Waste management and disposal. There is no national strategy for sound management of POPs waste and to keep data on how it's generated, where it is. So we had to use, as for the previous developers, we just follow up where we don't have national annual reports to support it. We had to use the guidance document to guide us on how we determine that quantity there. Communication and awareness. There are limited awareness on the impact of POPs and the new listings, so that you don't get people coming out to you and say, well, okay, this is happening here, this is happening there. We're dealing with the agencies, and as we said, everybody is protecting themselves. So you don't get the real thing coming out in some cases to know if somebody's dumping at another location, etc. It's all a secret, and we understand why it's being kept on the wraps. Policy and legislative. There are legislation that covers the POPs with the pesticides and toxic chemicals coming on board. But with every new addition, those documents need to be amended. And we're talking amendment. We need to convince people, look at the industrial aspect of it along with the various other things to see how it's going to impact. Of course, people they don't want to come out and state that, etc. So there are some challenges there with that aspect, but some legislations are there to protect against that. Impact of the identified challenges. Well, we know that if we don't have all the data, we can be on the reporting on the POPs. There could be more out there, could be hidden somewhere, and the associated risk remains. So you could have health and environmental hazards if we don't know what are some of the areas that it's being dumped, etc. Inability to accurate. One of our issues was to estimate the PFAS contamination, because there are no lab facilities present for us to do that. All the foams, etc., it's imported, it's distributed, we have the data on that, but what contains PFAS, we were unable to really make a determination here. Similar for the HBCD and the SCCP, because some of that is contained within imported stuff with the thing, and it's difficult for us. So we had to able to estimate that, and so we really don't know the exact figures for that. We have a very close estimate because of what we used, but it's good to have a determination, especially in products that is passing under the radar using the harmonization code or using it inaccurately is something that we don't know about. In terms of the successes that we've achieved, we have a multi-stakeholder network that is still active. They're always there. It's established. It's keep going. Updates are provided there. We were able to align our inventories with other conventions, for example, the Basel and Rotterdam Convention. We were able to establish and build on the baselines for 28 identified POPs. That was what we covered with our inventory. We've laid the groundwork for improved chemicals and waste management. Reflection on how this is a strategic way forward, what we have learned. The inventories are more than data collection. They drive systems change. We foster interagency coordination. There is some public awareness for some of the areas. We were able to achieve some of that. We support from international partners from our country, and it remains crucial for us to achieve that aspect. Where are we going? Developing the inventories and putting it together, referring to it in the NIP as just part of it, it needs to inform national planning and further enforcement so that if our health and the environment could be the beneficiary on the people of Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Basuda, for sharing the insights from Guyana's NIP and Guyana's inventories. And I think it will be very much beneficial for most of the participants here. And I see we have a comment on the chat just from China, Chen Yuan. Thank you so much. Yes, coordination among the ministries is very crucial, as mentioned as well by Mr. Basuda. And I guess we are ready to hear from our next participant from the Bahamas, Miss Eustacia Jennings from Jazz Consultants. She's a national lead for the Bahamas and is supporting the overall NIP update in the country. So over to you, Eustacia, and I guess my colleagues Karen and James will support you with the slides.
All right, thank you.
Please be mindful of the time because we are a little bit running off.
Yeah, I won't take long because a lot of what I had to say, a lot of the other participants talked about. So I'll just wait for my slides to come up. And yeah, so I'll just start by saying the Bahamas is conducting our national update. We're in the middle of it. We're just had our national POPs inventory validation workshop last week. So we're really in the thick of things. Dominica is in the project with us, but they are actually currently today and tomorrow having their national inventory workshop. So I don't know if the slides are going to be showing. Are they showing yet? Because I don't see them. All right, there we go. Okay, can they go in presenter mode or? Okay, yeah. So our project execution, so we can go past that. So from the Bahamas, like you said, I'm the national project lead, and we are working with PCRC Caribbean is the project execution that we're using, and it's very helpful because they have conducted these projects throughout the Caribbean already, like with Guyana and Suriname and St. Lucia, etc. So we're able to glean information, past experiences, and it really helps a lot when you're able to get that information. It also helps that we're in this together with other countries, so they share similar issues that we do. So we have joint meetings, and we're trying to help each other. We have one national update expert for both teams, who's Dr. David Hines out of Australia, and he has been very helpful in helping to guide us in our work plan and coming up with our questions and editing our inventories and just helping to get us along in the process. Both of the teams, we have leads. I'm the lead for the Bahamas, and then we have a legal consultant and a national project assistant or another team member that are assisting us with the project. And so it helps to have more than just one person who's doing everything because it is a lot of work. So for the Bahamas, we submitted our original NIP back in 2021, but when it was submitted, it was only covered the first 12 POPs. So it really is an update for all the additional POPs to do that inventory. And so it is still a lot of work, even though it was just submitted in 2021. We still had a lot of data to collect. And so next slide, you can see the roadmap of what it should look like, the milestones, and the project should take 2 years. We're already a year and a half in, and we spent really a year just in data collection in number 2. So we started in November of 2023, and we just had our national validation workshop last week. So it's been a long process with the data collection, and even in the data collection, we still have a lot of gaps. But we have to move forward. So we've identified them for being addressed, and we'll see how we can best. I've gleaned actually some insights during this call to help us to fill some of those gaps. So hopefully some of those interventions work for us also. So thank you all for sharing your knowledge. So what I'm going to share just briefly in the next slide are some of the issues, challenges, and lessons that we've learned. Like I said, a lot of these have already been covered by some of the other countries. But I think one of the things that's very unique to the Bahamas is our geographical constraints. As you may or may not know, Bahamas is made up of 700 islands and keys. We have about 25 of them inhabited. So a lot of times when we do these national projects, they're very focused on just Nassau. And there are a lot of other islands where there are issues that have to be addressed, but sometimes the time and budget is a constraint. Just getting to some of the islands and getting information from some of the other islands that are affected, sometimes it's not feasible. And so those are real issues sometimes with presenting a national inventory or a national plan or whatever we're doing. And so we have to take that into consideration. And so those are some real issues. As we mentioned, like other countries with the data gaps that we've seen, we just weren't getting responses from our stakeholders, or the data that we were getting were not in a manner that we could use them. Customs has information, but like Dr. Webb was saying, the global harmonization system isn't quite in place, so it doesn't classify the pesticides, or herbicides, et cetera, like we need it to be classified. And so that's an issue. So we're still trying to find ways to fill some of those data gaps so we can have a more cohesive and a proper inventory. And some of that is just trying to get our stakeholders on board. We found that we have stakeholders that are fatigued because our national working group, unfortunately, is working on a lot of different projects. So there's the Jeff Island projects, there's the Mercury Minamata project, there's end-of-life vehicle projects, there's the plastic pollution project, there's the greenhouse gas project, climate change, and with a small country like the Bahamas, we're using the same national working group, we're using the same stakeholders. So sometimes they get kind of, they get antsy and a little upset for us to keep coming back to them for data and information and another workshop and another validation and another report. And so we've seen them kind of weaning in their participation and interest. So just trying to keep them, engaged and trying to make sure we collaborate between similar projects that are collecting some of the same information, because some of us consultants don't work on all of the projects. I was grateful to work on a few projects that were similar, like the stockpiles and et cetera, so I could use the same data for the other projects. But on projects where the consultants are different and they're collecting some of the same data, we need better collaboration between the various entities. And with that comes, buy-in and ownership, which is one of the issues from the focal points. And I think that's something that we're learning, is that the data, the information, the project has to be housed, hopefully in a ministry, because when you have consultants like myself who are just hired for this project, when we leave and we finish the project, sometimes the information, what's produced, the plans, like we saw with the previous NIP, nothing happens with it, or nothing much is done. And so making sure that we have ownership and that the focal points buy in, and that's a central place for the data, for the national plan, so that it is moved forward and the country can actually move forward. Like I said, we're in the thick of things, so we're willing and open to learning and growing so that we can improve on this NIP process, because it is very taxing. We're not having as good a ride as Guyana seemed to have had. So we're looking for ways to better ourselves and learn as we grow. So I think that's me. I think I'm under time, so I'm going to stop right there. And thank you all.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. And it was really great to hear from about the experience from the Bahamas. And we hope you can benefit from our interventions, knowledge sharing interventions, and support from the BCRC Caribbean as much as possible throughout the whole process. But I also would like to agree with you about the institutional knowledge loss, which happens mostly in many countries where consultants are hired, and it's I guess, very important that this knowledge is captured by the ministries, and it just doesn't go away once people leave the project. So we do have one more colleague from the region, which is Fernando Horna from the ministry in Peru. Fernando, by any chance, are you here? Or Marcelo Vidalon, are you here with us? And would you like to jump in and quickly share some insights from Peru? Hello, Fernando. Nice to meet you.
Hola, ¿me escuchan? Buenos días.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Sí. Ok. Bueno,
Okay.
ante todo un saludo para la
I,
mesa
of
y
course,
los representantes de los
greet
diferentes
all of
países
you,
que han
of the different
participado en este
representatives of the
proceso.
countries that are
Queríamos transmitirles
participating
nuestras
in this process.
experiencias,
We
¿no?
wanted
Tenemos,
to
tomando en
share
cuenta que
our
este es un
perspective with
conversatorio, bueno, vamos
you.
a conversarlo, vamos a
We
hablarlo.
are going to talk it
Y
through.
más que todo son las
And
experiencias de Perú en el proceso de
the experience
inventario
of
de los
Peru
COPs
and the process
para
of
la
updating
actualización
their
del Plan
NIP.
Nacional de Aplicación, ¿no? Bueno, en general, podemos comentarles
Generally,
que en el Perú
we
hemos
can comment to you
elaborado
that
un
in
informe
Peru we have been
preliminar del
able
inventario de
to
COPs,
develop
el cual
a
está en
preliminary
revisión,
report on these
¿no?
COPs
Para
that is
esto se
currently
ha
being
contado con la
revised.
participación
We have had the
estratégica de muchos
participation
sectores
of many different sectors
del Estado, privados
from the states as well as
y
private
sobre todo,
entities. And
según
above all,
el COP, ¿no? La
according
entidad
to
que
the
corresponda
COP, the
es la que
entity
nos
that
hemos
is
apoyado.
responsible for this, they have
Por
been able
ejemplo,
to
con el
support us
Ministerio
as well.
de la
So, for
Producción
example, with the
que
Ministry of
participaron
Production
en
that
la difusión de las
participated
encuestas para el
in
cálculo de
the
las
sharing
emisiones de
of
dioxinas y
surveys
furanos, dado que
for
esto,
calculating the
como
quantities, for
bien
example, of
comentaba Marcia,
furans and
nos hemos
dioxides.
apoyado en
As
estas
Marcia
encuestas
has
para que
said, we
no
have been
sea a
able to
través del
have
Ministerio del
help
Ambiente, porque a
to
veces
do this so that it
las
does not only
empresas
fall
o
to the
entidades
Ministry of
lo relacionan
Environment,
como una
the
fiscalización,
other agencies as well that
una
were related to, for
auditoría o
example,
una supervisión, ¿no?
financing,
Dado que
audits,
somos la
and
autoridad también en
supervision
ese
as well.
aspecto.
We
Entonces,
had
es
different authorities
estratégico,
involved in this. So
debemos
this was a
apoyarnos en
strategic
estos sectores
collaboration, and we were
para
able to
difundir las
get
encuestas y
collaboration
a
from
través de
different
ellas
sectors to share
poder
or to
obtener la
disseminate
información que
these
nos
surveys to
derive en
have
el cálculo de
information
las
that
emisiones o
would be able to
liberaciones
allow
de
us to
dioxinas y furanos.
calculate the emissions of dioxins
También
and
vale decir
furans.
que muchos datos técnicos
It's also worth saying
los
that
hemos
much
logrado a
of the
través de los
technical
diferentes
data
anuarios y
was
estadísticas, ¿no?
taken from different
Sobre
types
todo
of
del Ministerio de Energía y
statistics,
Minas,
for example, from
que
different
están actualizados
ministries.
hasta el 2022 y en algunos
We
casos
have
hasta el
updates from
2023, ¿no?
2022 and up to
Esto nos dio
2023 in some
la posibilidad
areas,
de hacer
and this
cálculos
gives us
al
the possibility
100%,
to do
¿no? Ya que
calculations completely
las encuestas, por su
based on
relativamente
these surveys as well.
baja participación, digamos, ¿no? O
We had
mediana
some low or
participación,
some
no
mid
se lograría
participation
tener
in these
datos a ese
surveys at
100%.
times with
Con
getting
respecto a las
the
dioxinas y furanos, y
information.
más adelante Marcela
With
tal vez
regard
le
to
dará más
dioxins and
detalles sobre
furans, but we also spoke about
estas encuestas,
these
este inventario
surveys,
de
these
dioxinas y furanos,
inventories
¿no?
of dioxins and
Ahora, para el
furans.
inventario PCB,
For
la
the PCB
información
inventory,
acá se
the
está actualizando con un
information
proyecto
is
PCB.
more or less
Ya se
updated
tenía
through a
información
project,
de
and
otros
we had
inventarios, pero bueno,
information of other inventories that were done
casi 15 años o de
from
antigüedad,
about
entonces
15 years
queríamos
ago.
actualizar esto
So
en
we
base
wanted to
a un
update all
proyecto
of
que viene
this through
desarrollando
a
también el Ministerio
project
del Ambiente,
that is
un
also
órgano
being developed
ejecutor,
by the Ministry of
y con
Environment.
estos datos esperamos
And
alimentar
with
este
this
inventario de PCB
data,
para llegar
we were able to
datos más reales, ¿no?
have more
Eh,
concrete data on our
En lo
PCBs.
que respecta a plaguicidas, su control
With
está
respect to
principalmente a
pesticides, their
cargo del
control
Ministerio de
falls
Agricultura y
under
del Ministerio
the
de Salud,
Ministry of
dado que
Agriculture
son
and
los
Health,
órganos
as
competentes
those
para
are the competent
regular el uso
authorities
agrícola y
to
sanitario en
regulate
estos
their
sectores, ¿no?
use
Sin
in
embargo,
health and
podemos adelantar
agriculture.
que
we were not able to move forward with all of the pesticides that were prohibited, and that was the last thing that we had to do with regard to the use and elimination of methoxychlor. We are still investigating if it can be used here with regard to environment within local use, as well as PFOS. And because sometimes it can be coming in under other names or under CAS numbers, so we still need to be able to do some searches on that to see, for example, sometimes if it is actually entering the country under different names or under different identification. So we are still waiting to be able to confirm that. However, we also wanted to highlight that we've been able to move forward with our inventories on chlorpyrifos. And although it's on the list of candidates to enter for COP products, we have been able to move forward with the prohibition of its use for agricultural purposes. With regard to the new POPs, we have been able to look at data for the importation provided by customs to do a calculation of the contents of these different compounds, for example, the brominated compounds, PFOS, PFOA as well, and to see what they have been used in, for example. And these are only imported by us. We do not produce these substances. So what we would like to do is at least identify them and then achieve a calculation of the existing stockpiles of these. We had it from 2015, so we'd like to bring it up to 2023, and for this, we'd have to look at the different tariffs information that has been given to us by the Secretariat. We think that we need more conversation and more awareness raising to have greater responses coming from the industry, because this is still something new to them to give. They're still a little hesitant to give information and to be able to have the updating of these data and therefore carry out our inventory of these new POPs. With regard to lessons learned and challenges that we have faced, specifically with the new industrial POPs, we believe that we need more sharing of information regarding the goals and the scope of the convention, as well as more of a mass communication strategy with an emphasis on evaluation and communication of risks regarding the PCBs, the unintentional POPs, as well as the new industrial POPs that we know are new and we have very little knowledge of them still. We hope that these actions will contribute to generate public awareness and social pressure to promote regulations that will be able to facilitate the progressive application of the convention, and that would allow us to develop the national inventory to guarantee our compliance with all of our objectives through a viable and realistic national implementation plan. We also have a General Comprehensive Law on Management of Chemicals that is in a phase of approval, but this does not deal with those chemicals that are contained in different products. We would need to, for example, it includes the PCBs, but it does not include the new industrial POPs or the unintentional POPs. That's what I understand. It does include the dioxins and furans. So what we can do, what we understand is that we need to develop a specific regulation for the identification, the registration, the use, and elimination of these substances. With regard to with the PCBs, we do have some regulatory arrangements with regard to those equipment that contain PCB for the electrical and mining industries. We can confirm that the scope and level of implementation has been significant with regard to both sectors. So within the electric sector, we have been able to advance through the development and implementation of environmental management plans for PCBs, which look at timelines to be able to allow for the declaration of existing stockpiles of these substances and allow for their elimination in 2028. For the mining sector, we do not have this plan just yet as a specific management instrument, and the regulations that we do have allow these persons to store some of their products, but they have to declare their existence to be able to have a period of 12 months to be able to eliminate them. But this is not establishing an articulation, a direct articulation. This regulation is not directly articulated with the National Implementing Plan for the Stockholm Convention. So within the framework that we have, it's limiting the electric sector because it is still a strategy that is multi-sectoral. We have also mentioned that actually, or currently, we do have a draft regulation which seeks to manage the generation of PCB in all of the economic sectors, as well as apart from the electronic and mining sectors, to close all of those gaps that still continue to exist with regard to our compliance with the Stockholm Convention. This regulation would be able to allow to have regulation, for example, of management of transformers. It is also worth sharing that with regard to the oils and parts and components of transformers, we still have some existences of PCB, and these are being informally stored still in these different sectors. But they have some management programs for the management of these equipment. But beyond the technical aspects, we also consider that the agencies and the state should design and implement financial mechanisms, for example, credit lines, to facilitate the repossession of these PCB equipment, especially within the industrial sector, because as different to the electrical sector and other sectors, they do not have equipment that would be that would facilitate their immediate replacement. So what we need is to guide this industry to voluntarily declare their equipment that contains PCB. We also need to look at basically allowing for open declarations so that we can have a greater level of advancement in the development of our PCB inventory. These are the goals that I can share with you, the scope that I can share with you with regard to our perspective. And as Marcela said, we can share some experiences with regard to dioxins and furans that we have already achieved. And if you would like to reach out for questions, we would take them. Good day, everyone. I am Marcela. I am going to give you some of the achievements that we have reached with our development of our inventories on dioxins and furans. We have worked with the Ministry of Environment together with the Ministry of Production, which deals with all of the different industries that can feed the database that we have, so that we are able to take calculations on the dioxins and furans at an annual rate, which allows us to do our calculations. We did one in 2022 and one in 2023. Through meetings, as we have mentioned before, they were done with an initial workshop to sensitize the different agencies. We were able to work with them through different surveys to consult the type of technology that they were working with, which is the most important for the calculations by the toolkit. And we were able to have favorable responses working in hand with the Ministry of Production. And the gaps that we were able to identify and cover, we were able to use some official data that was presented by different industries, for example, electric and mining, to carry out these estimations or these calculations. There was initiative on the Ministry of Production to send out or to include these surveys in databases that they had to be able to obtain this information in an annual manner. This is one of the things that we have been able to achieve by working with them. And in this process, we visualize that in Peru, we'd be able to have the sharing of information between the prior ministries and the ones that are existing, so that we can have a unified database that would be able to have these types of annual declarations on parts of the industries that would then facilitate the use and development of the toolkit. With regard to the ministry, looking at the necessity to work together, we have been more familiarized and we've had a little bit more trust between us to be able to work hand in hand with two other projects. The Green Chemicals Project, which is related to the COPs, they are trying to develop pilot projects to substitute POPs that are actually used in production in some industries, so that we can have contact with them to work together to have a shared vision. So it's not just that one ministry can identify the POPs in their industry and declare their emissions, but they're also looking at giving them alternatives, other products that they can substitute these POPs with, so that they can have a more viable solution. We are also working with a project, as we've commented before, which is the inventory or the ESM of those polychlorinated products in Peru, the PCBs in Peru, as well as pesticides. Working together with these different projects, we can also facilitate the optimizing of resources that we have among our industries, where we can find these data and to be able to carry out our databases.
Of all of these chemicals as well. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much to our colleagues from Peru, both Fernando and Marcela. I think that was a very comprehensive overview of the work that had been done in the country, and also very much looking forward to hear more about the legislation that is coming on the PCBs. I guess that would be quite great, and it would be very helpful. So I'm very sure that we are running out of time. So we still have a couple of countries waiting for their presentations. This is Armenia and the North Macedonia, Montenegro and Kazakhstan. So I will really appreciate if we will quickly jump to the presentations from our colleagues from Europe and Central Asia. And if you don't mind, we'll start with Armenia. We do have the speaker, Mr. Artak Khachaturian from the Ministry of Environment of Armenia. So over to you, Mr. Artak.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will quickly try to share my screen, if allowed. Is it okay?
Yeah, perfect. We can see a screen.
Okay. So thanks a lot. Thank you for this opportunity to let us share our experience. And today I have honor to share with you our initial inventory of perfluorooctane sulfonic acid and salts and perfluorooctane sulfonic fluoride and related substances. So, because we are running out of time, I will skip some general information slides, and just to let you know that first we studied the global use of PFAS and related substances, and of course we conduct our inventory using the information of National Statistics Service and industrial sector, also customs service. So after studying the global trends, we came up with this logical framework about distribution of PFAS and related substances in the country from the very beginning, the point they enter the country, which is mainly import and not production, and then you see the layers, how it's distributed. We have producers and suppliers of chemical agents, and then we have professional users, industry, of using PFAS in preparation of materials or some articles, products. Then we have retailers, manufacturers of articles and products, and then again retailers of some goods. And then I would like to draw your attention to the information which is, from my point of view, needed to know for everybody who's gonna conduct inventory of these substances. So you need to know production or import of the substances, then presence of products on your market, flows into the country. Then you have to deal with waste fractions, then of course with stockpiles and releases into the environment. Of course, you have to understand what kind of industry you have, what kind of products there are on the market and in the use, which might contain the substances of interest. And of course, one of the stakeholders will be the industry, which is either using or creating these substances, but I'm not gonna take your time. So we started with planning of the inventory. So we established a national inventory team. Then we identified the all stakeholders, defined the scope of the inventory, because it was the first time we were conducting this inventory. So of course we used the guidance. And you know, the guidance offers you tiered approach, and we mainly use tier 1 and sometimes some mix of tiers 1 and 2 for our inventory. And the main source of the information was National Statistics Service. And also we use address codes and commodity nomenclature for foreign economic activities of Eurasian Economic Union codes to identify the products and all the substances imported for the period of time. Thus, and when calculating the amount of PFAS and related substances, we use qualitative approach recommended in the guidance, because taking into account the technical limitations, which has been also discussed today, and in 2013 it was not possible to go further details in this inventory. So in the inventory list, we included 8 groups of goods and products manufactured in the country, 36 items exported from the Republic of Armenia, goods and products, and 58 groups of goods and products imported into the Republic of Armenia. Producers of 8 groups of goods and products provided the information on our request about the volumes of productions and waste generated also, and the disposal habits. Also, according to literature, many chemical agents such as salts of carboxylic acid, amines, esters, iodides, phosphonic substances, alcohols, phosphates, and others may degrade forming PFOS-related substances. So in this regard, we took into account also the expert and impaired of 5 groups of the chemicals, which could serve as possible precursors of PFOS. So the following table shows the rate of impaired expert production and use of PFOS between 1998 and 2012. And it should be noted that the PFOS content of locally produced consumer goods is also based on statistical data and assumptions. It doesn't mean that PFOS have been imported to Republic of Armenia and used during the manufacture of these goods. Rather, the PFOS might have already been in the raw material, mainly, and the Armenian industry used it to produce goods. And so a steady growth can be observed, as you can see, in the use of PFOS, in which the past decade more than doubled. Then the important and the use trend lines follow each other, representing that most of PFOS in the Republic of Armenia is imported, while production and export remain steady. An analysis of sectors showed that 70% of PFOS was used in textile and upholstery sectors, such as furniture, mattresses, pillows, and others. The second largest user was coating and additive industry, and which mainly includes consumer goods like washing detergent, sanitary, which was third largest sector. Then regarding waste, PFOS inventory exercise also estimated the generation of PFOS containing waste, and time trend analysis of the most significant sectors is presented here. The most prevalent disposal in the Republic of Armenia, unfortunately, is dumping. Therefore, PFOS content of the disposed articles and consumer goods can easily be available, again, unfortunately, for environmental transport. And since 2004, it was disposed amount of PFOS containing goods and articles, as you see, has increased from nearly 5 to 28 tons annually, which is approximately 500 tons increase in 8 years. The most significant increase happened from 2004 to 2008. Then the growth has slowed down, probably because of the global economic crisis. And in 2012, approximately 80% of PFOS-based stream was paints and varnishes. The second most prevalent PFOS-based stream was detergent, and since 2011, furniture and upholstery items have also been disposed of in higher and higher amounts. And looking at the PFOS content of waste, which we were disposed between 1997 and 2012, we can observe that the same trend, more or less, what we could see in the case of goods and articles. And since 2004, there is steady growth in PFAS amount that was landfill. The share of pens have dramatically increased. And since 2009, the share of PFAS of upholstery origin is also increasing. And these are two sectors that would require attention, of course, during the next NIP update cycle. And so inventory showed, conducted in 2013, showed that the most part of PFAS and related products used to be imported to the Republic of Armenia. Just two words about issues. Of course, it's been already discussed earlier. Information gathering is one of the main issues, and also coordination between entities is another issue. And for example, some data such as fire extinguishers in military sector, or even number of vehicles can be classified. So these are like main issues we have faced, and this is maybe all from my side. I would like to answer some questions if there are. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Artak Hajatran. And I think that was a very comprehensive overview of the situation in Armenia, especially pertaining to PFAS. In the interest of time, I guess we will be right away moving to our next participant, Ms. Slavianka, from the North Macedonia, who is presenting the Ecomosaic Consulting. Over to you, Slavianka. I hope we can be quite quick, and I do apologize as we are running late. And Slavianka, I guess you are on mute. So if you could unmute yourself, that would be great.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's okay now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thanks for this opportunity to elaborate how we in North Macedonia are dealing with update of NIP for our country. I'm one of the experts, 9 experts, working on update of NIP for POPs chemicals in our country, because we already worked 13 years ago on the first NIP. After that, there was an update, and nowadays we are working, and I can say we are in the middle of this process, and we passed through several activities. I will pass on that. I will speak only on the group of chemicals, PBDs and PFAS. At the beginning, we defined the stakeholder list, depending on the application that we covered, sectors that we covered. Stakeholder engagement, we propose several communication channels, how we will communicate with our stakeholders, and what type methods we will use. We define CAS numbers for relevant products that contain PFAS and PBDs. We identify containing products and waste as well. We review updated guidances. The guidances that were produced were very helpful for us, because we find very useful information, data, methodology, how to approach. So we appreciate these guidances a lot. We develop tailored questionnaires. We are in the process of analyzing import-export data, and we are synthesizing data for each of our 13 sectors that we are working on. And at the end, we will have this validation workshop in May. It is planned to be held, and prioritization. And after that, we will work on the NIP itself. You can see on the slide what type of products we will cover. For PBD's inventory, we will see the we will cover the electronic and electrical equipment and VE. We will cover transport sector, and also we add, for this update, we add additional 2 sectors, construction and textile sector. And for PFOS, we include the same sectors that we covered last time, firefighting foams, paper and paper pulp, galvanization, and construction and insulation materials, and we add textile and carpet sector here. We identify all relevant stakeholders in our country. You can see some of them for PBDs, for PFAS as well. And in summary, we mapped 163 companies and national institutions that we have worked with in order to collect relevant data and to be able to understand how is the situation in our country. You can see all these numbers. These are the number of the stakeholders involved. We start with preparation of the sheet with brief information for the project, for PBDs and PFAS chemicals for each of the sectors covered, with general information and CAS number of the chemicals. For construction sector is this general information. We engage stakeholders on different ways. We have a first meeting with the public institutions, starting with Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning, Macedonian Environmental Information Center, Customs. We have Ministry of Agriculture, because as a team we were all present on this meeting. We have internal meetings among us as experts. After that, we organize a meeting with the private companies. These meetings were very useful for all of us to discuss this necessity to collect relevant data. We continue after that additional round of meetings with relevant companies, and you can see we prepare a customized questionnaires tailor-made for each stakeholder group, 13 stakeholder groups, and we share to all of these around 200 stakeholders. This is one of the questionnaire for the construction sector, and here is the name of the companies that we send this questionnaire. We receive answers from some of them with information that they do not use POPs chemicals or no waste containing POPs they have at their facilities. You can see here we get some data, for example, for firefighting foams, important, and they are still used only for simulated exercise for some of them. And very important that we got very useful information and data from our Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Custom Office. We provide to them 115 codes, custom codes, and they respond on that. 85% they respond of all of that codes. for imported and exported products that contain POPs chemicals. State Statistical Office, also, they have a very good MaxStat database. We had internal meetings with them, and they provide us additional information, especially for end of life vehicles, because they provide us information if the vehicles are old or new one imported, production, where are they produced, but also how many years they are registered and they are in use in the country. All information that we need for the vehicles we got from their side. Also, they provide us information about construction sector and the electrical and electronic equipment, import-export, but also on the and Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning as well. Here I can show you only how we got all these numbers. Here are the codes, and here is the description, and export, import, electric and electronic equipment. For PFAS, we put here some of the polymers and import. This is the long list. We have a lot of Excel sheets with all this information. And the most important at the end of this collection and analyzing of data was which source of data we will rely on. So we produce additional Excel sheet where we put all source of data. As you can see, we have collective handlers of EE and VE, Macedonian Information Centers with indicator report. We have this MaxStat that I mentioned from Statistical Office. We have customs, annual report from the ministry, and we have this harmonized Comtrade that Dr. Weber mentioned. We used a lot, but after that, when we put quantity of equipment released to the market, what type of data they all offer to us, and quantity of waste of EE, we found that data that will be used in the development of PBD's inventory, especially for electronic EE and VE, is data from State Statistical Office for VE and data from National Customs Tariff List for electrical equipment put on the market in Macedonia for all 11 years that we cover in our inventory. So this is a summary that we use this as a most reliable source of information, and this is my last slide where I would like to show you how we will make the material balance. The material balance production of E, import of new E, and export. And what is the E in use? Generated VE and collected VE, export of VE, and recycling of VE in the country. So based on this similar material flows, we will produce for each of these 13 sectors. Similar challenges as other presenter already presented. It's very difficult to get a row of line of data for all 11 years. Lack of coordination between different sectors in one company, procurement department with sales department with environmental experts, incomplete or inconsistent data for longer periods, lack of comprehensive data on waste flows, but we are trying, as I mentioned, we are trying to overcome all this. We are aware about these challenges, but we are trying to make all these to base the inventory on the most reliable data set, and we use it, and we are preparing our inventory on PBDs and PFAS. All other experts are working on other POPs chemicals. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Slavyanka. And that was very insightful, and how you visualized the data set, the various data sets that you have to juggle and manage in your country. This is impressive, I would say. And we do have...
I can say I have supporters, my colleagues, Vedran, Jana, and Stefan. They support me.
Yes, indeed, this is a very collective effort that requires a lot of support from other team members. And I believe we have another two speakers waiting in the line. This is Ms. Daniela Shukovic from the Montenegro, and also our speaker from Kazakhstan. So we will quickly go through the slides and finish our session, panel expert panel. And over to you, Daniela. Thank you.
Okay, can I start the presentation, because I would like to be as concise as possible and keep your time. So, conducting an inventory of brominated POPs poses a challenge for Montenegro, particularly due to limited human resources in this field. However, the country-specific characteristic offers certain advantages that help overcome these obstacles. As a small country, Montenegro benefits from close cooperation among experts from various sectors. This long-standing, I'm speaking about long-standing collaboration, and this collaboration enables faster and more efficient exchange of information, which significantly facilitates the implementation of POPs inventories. As you might assume, Slavyanka already spoke about that, and I don't want to repeat too much regarding to these steps in accordance with guidelines, but first we establish a team and include all key stakeholders from the relevant sectors. Before elaborating on the challenge, because I will focus just on challenges, how we try to solve them, and about next steps. Before elaborating on the challenges, I must emphasize that Montenegro is predominantly importing country. Our domestic production is very limited, and there are virtually no industry that use POPs chemicals in manufacturing, specifically when it comes to PBD. This fact has to some extent reduced the scale of the challenges. In Montenegro, PBD are primarily associated with electrical and electronic equipment sector, as well as transport sector, but also correspondingly with the waste originated from these sectors. For HBCD POPs, the focus is normally on the construction sector. Key challenges in PBD inventory development are actually basic on the fact that Montenegro doesn't have register, as example, for CRT device in use. This is something what escape every time in our administration, statistical administration sector, and also lack of the end-of-life data. Even we are speaking about electronic equipment or vehicles, etc. So how we, in accordance with guidelines, we solve this first problem. We address the issue of CRT monitors through a household survey. Interestingly, we discovered that many households still possess cathode ray tube monitors, what was for me personally something what was strange, but it's fact. This time, I have to underline that thanks to our custom administration data, we were also able to compile an inventory for smaller electric and electronic device. We cover almost all of this list of equipment, and a notable improvement compared to the previous inventory. We included an estimation LCD equipment also. What is actually challenges when we are speaking when it comes to e-waste? Challenges that there are significant discrepancies in data provided by the institutional system. I would like to emphasize that we have one data from the statistical administration, but when we pass through our state waste management plan, we actually receive totally different data. although the tables show that DKBD content is not particularly high, you can see that I'm speaking about 0.5, etc. tones, and the difference are evident. Quantity are up to 10 times greater when using data from state-based management plan, but usually we use this worst scenario in our inventory. We will focus on this quantity. Also, what is the fact? In our country, in Montenegro, the dry population is particularly involved in activities related to electronic wastes, such as informal disassembly, recycling, or handling of electric products. These activities, as you already know, can expose all of these individuals to POPs, but not only POPs. We can speak about synergistic effects with other chemicals, with metals, etc. And at the meeting held in Podgorica in December in 2024, supported by Recetox and dedicated to inventory of POPs, one of the key conclusions was the need to educate this population about the dangers of POPs. I must emphasize that Ministry of Ecology has actively engaged in this matter, and the workshop is scheduled to be organized in June, and I'm very, very happy because of that. Just short about HBCD and challenges in this area. In Montenegro, also, there is a lack of comprehensive management for products containing HBCD that are not longer in use. In our country, the construction waste material are disposed of the destination location, but these insulation material are disposed together in municipal waste. What we actually did, we use that was question for us how to calculate this data, and we use this literature data that indicated in a total amount of construction waste, the fraction of insulation materials about 1%, and using data about total quantity of construction waste material from the administration, our statistical administration, we calculate this amount. But I just would like to explain you what is 0.125. It's very from point when we are speaking about calculation from our point of view is good, but we will see in the future what will happen. In our central register for this period of 2017-2023, no manufacturers of HBCD or granules of extruded and expanded polystyrene were registered. Consequently, preparation of HBCD inventory was based on the analysis of import. And what is the fact? Import consisted 8 types of granules from this period of time. From just one, we have just one single business entity imported actually. Based on data which obtained from the custom administration, and after with the interview with this important representative, it was concluded that all types of imported granules were represented in approximately equal quantities. And also just one of these 8 was positive on HBCD. So when we make this calculation, this is actually 12.5, and just 51 tons of granulate, we make calculation, and that was not so too much significant amount of HBSC. But what is our next step? Taking into account that there are opportunity for alternative HBCD with the ministry, we discuss how to solve this problem. It's necessary, and we will organize some training, intensive campaign to raise awareness and provide training on the risk of HBCD safer alternatives, especially for the industry. But also it's really important to establish some guidelines for how to dispose this material, taking into account that I already mentioned, we are speaking about our landfills, our sanitary landfill, where is not definitely place to dispose this material. So I try to be in the scope of these 8 minutes, which Anastasia gave us as opportunity to share with you our experience. I'm sure that I'm in the scope of that. Am I right?
Thank you very much, Daniela, and thank you for sharing your experience with the HBCD in the Montenegro. I believe our colleagues in the European region will definitely benefit from this, and we hope to hear more from you. And we have just one last speaker from the Kazakhstan, Ms. Jansulu Kushenova, who's joining from Kazakhstan Center of Chemical Safety, ECOMER. And over to you, Jansulu.
Hello, dear friends. I'm expert on new pops in Kazakhstan. Just a minute.
So we heard slightly the echo on your end.
Okay, 1 minute.
I think it's okay now.
I can. Sorry.
It does sound okay at the moment.
Yes. 1 minute.
But if you're sharing the slides, we will really appreciate if you could.
Yes, I have slides.
Keep it within no more than 5 minutes.
Sorry. Нет. Не получается. Sorry, I can't.
Жансулу, пока вы ищете слайды, может быть, мы перейдем к дискуссии экспертов и потом вернемся к вам быстро.
Maybe while you are looking for the slides, we can turn to the discussion of experts, and then we will turn back to you.
Yeah, and
maybe I can send the slides to you.
Yeah, maybe I directly comment on the last presentation of Montenegro, where it was shown that two state agencies were providing two very different estimates. The reason for this big difference in estimates was that in the waste management, you cover all electronics, and in the national statistics, only the officially managed electronics in end-of-life waste was covered. So therefore, you have about a 50 times difference. This you can also see. There is the Global Statistical Partnership, which gives data on electronics and electronic waste for all countries in the world. And here I just have copied you now here in the chat for Montenegro. And so the Global Statistical Partnership estimates that around 2% of the electronics which goes into end of life is actually going to the formal end of life and is therefore covered by statistics. So this can explain just the big difference between your National Statistical Office and your calculation from the waste management. Also, when you look to the total numbers, the end of life from the waste management estimate is around in the range of the estimate also of the Global Statistical Partnership for Montenegro. Yeah, so I think this clarifies. Yeah, please.
Sorry, first of all, I would like to greet you after I don't know how many years, because when we start, maybe that you don't forget, but we start with the first national implementation plan thanks to expert knowledge of Dr. Roland Weber, I think 15 years ago. There are a lot of discrepancies also with our plan. We also checked this information that you suggest to us, but there are also discrepancies between plan and this webpage actually information. We try to use that, especially because you use that in Nigeria cases, I remember. Except these guidelines for Stockholm Convention, you use really very much, thanks for that, your case studies for Nigeria, especially for these impact factors, which we actually use for calculation. But when we are speaking about waste, that was really difficult. We asked our Environmental Protection Agency, who is responsible for managing that ministry, which data we will use for that. they are not sure, and they told us wherever you want, because we have to start from the beginning with this inventarization of waste. So thank you so much, but this is actually something what we will see what we'll do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's just look, and it really fits then. Yeah, so this estimate of only 2% officially recovered.
Yes.
Yeah, this really explained the data. Yeah, and also the discrepancy. So you just look one time to this global statistical partnership for Montenegro, and I just had here the example of 2022. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Roland, and thank you, Daniela, once again. Maybe if we have any quick insights from Dr. Ramesh Kumar or Marcia before we wrap up and before we probably try to convene with Jean-Sulu again.
Yeah, Dr. Roland has already, every slide to slide, he is giving his inputs. I think I need not to add much further inputs because we are running short of time. So let us listen to the next final presentation and we'll offer final comments. Thank you.
Maybe one addition. Before, when it was discussed about the stakeholders, people mentioned ministries for the inventory and industry, but I think one very important stakeholder is also the science community, and actually also Dr. Ramesh is part of the science community. I remember we had also this round table discussion, and at that time some people from ministry said, yeah, but some of these inventories are kind of scientific assessments, yes, and I completely agree that some of these assessments are rather better with a university supporting a ministry, that a person in the ministry have to look to these nitty-gritty data and do these complicated calculations. So my recommendation is really to improve the science policy interface and involve the scientific community. They love to juggle with this data and reflect on this data and scrutinize this data. And the big advantage is also that when you look about institutional capacity, often for universities, the professors and the doctors are for 10 years or even 20, 30 years at that institution. So therefore, if you develop in your country institutional capacity at a university dealing with chemicals and waste, this can be really helpful for your inventories in future. And additionally, it's interesting for them. They can publish data and so on. Yeah, that would be another recommendation from my side.
Yeah, really, it is a very good comment from Dr. Roland. All countries has to improve their capacity for the POPs monitoring as well as POPs analysis, because mostly the national implementation plan development is more related to the country specific. So unless a country develops its own capacity, especially for POPs monitoring, then we will still rely on the tier 2 inventory. So actual sampling and analysis, it is more important for getting more accurate inventory, especially POPs in product as well as waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh Kumar and Dr. Roland Weber, for your insights. And I'm afraid we are really, really behind the time. So we do have our last speaker from Kazakhstan, and I will quickly share the slides on her behalf. This is Ms. Jean-Sulu Kushenova. I hope you can hear us. Yes.
Hello?
Yes, and let me share
Yes,
your slides. I received them.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I hope you can see my screen. It's very
Yes, yes, I see. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead.
My slide is short. I am expert on new POPs in Kazakhstan. For Kazakhstan, it's second inventory of new POPs. The inventory of new POPs is done based on the next slide. Sorry. Yes. The inventory of new POPs is done based on the guidelines for inventory and involves gathering and analyzing data from the Custom Control Committee of Ministry of Finance, Republic of Kazakhstan. Next slide, please. There you can see the 9 new POPs, what we provide inventory. Next slide, please. Thank you. The new POPs have never been produced in the Kazakhstan. They are imported into the Kazakhstan only as part of products and goods. The volumes of imported goods potentially contained FAS and SCCPS for the period 2010-2023 present on following slides. Can you? Next slides, please. Yes. There you can see volume of FAS in goods from last 13 years. And the next slide. Yes, this is volume of SCCPS in goods from the last 13 years in concentration minimal and maximum concentration in goods. Inventory of other new POPs is in process of work. It's done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jansulu. Thank you for sharing. We understand that Kazakhstan is now in the very beginning stage, but is moving very quickly towards updating the NEP. And thank you very much for sharing with us. So maybe before we wrap up, if any panelists have any comments in addition to what has been already mentioned. We had comprehensive presentations from. I believe 9 countries presented in this roundtable today, and I do apologize for running out of time, but thank you so much for staying with us.
I mean, a comment to the PFOS inventories. One is I already gave in the chat that for, I think it was Armenia, that a range of the PFOS sources which Armenia considered a PFOS source actually has not used PFOS the last 23 years. So there you really need to check the guidances and for what PFOS have been used in the last 20 years. I mentioned that since 2002 only China was a producer of PFOS, and they only used it in firefighting foams, chemicals for plating industry, pesticides, and in oil drilling. This means the inventory, for example, of cleaning agents or of paints, this is not PFOS. Other PFAS have been used there. So there, I think you need an additional check. And also in the last presentation of Kazakhstan, I think I saw something with 1,000 tons in paper. Also, PFOS has not been used in paper in the last, I would say, 20 years after 3M has stopped. So also there, I rather would doubt that actually this is PFOS what you inventory, but that this is rather a calculation. I would not call it mistake. Maybe you have used the inventory guidance and then you have found that in paper this concentration could be present. So it's for sure not PFOS. There is a use of PFAS still in paper, but these are normally not PFOS or PFOA. These are rather C6 chemistry, which are not considered POP PFAS. Yes, but let's say more detailed would need to have a direct discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Roland. And maybe Ramesh and Marce would have anything to add.
Yeah, final words. Yeah, really, it is a nice thing to see the global NIP update project, which is going on in several more than 40 countries. And it is good to see all participants coming from different zones, time zones, to come together and share their knowledge and exchange their ideas. I finally, I have only one recommendation for the countries. Please don't stop at the level of tier 2 inventory. Please go attempt beyond the tier 2, that is tier 3 inventory, actual sample collection and analysis. So that will only really enhance the country capacity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramesh. And maybe Marcia, any final remarks on presentations or any ideas you have in mind?
Oh, so many, but I don't know if we have enough time, but I'll be brief, okay? So, I'm going to pass to Spanish. Es muy impresionante todo el trabajo
It's
que los
very
países
impressive the
han
work
hecho
that these
en
countries
completar sus
have
inventarios y
done
la verdad
in
es que se
completing their
merece una
inventories,
felicitación
and this
por su
deserves your
inmenso esfuerzo.
congratulations for the great efforts that you have
Creo que la mayoría de
taken.
los países que
I think
presentaron
that
son
with among the countries
importadores
that
de
have,
productos con COPS, más
I
que
think that the
usuarios de
majority
las
of countries
sustancias
that
o
have
fabricantes de productos con COPS.
presented
Y el reto
importers of COPs
está
are
en
not really
identificar esos
producers, and
productos
so
a
the
nivel nacional,
challenge
esos
is
productos que son
identifying these products
importados.
at national levels, the
Hemos
products that
visto
are
que en el caso de
imported.
la región de
We have
Urulac, pues
seen that in the area
se
of the
nos ha
Urak
complicado un
region, for
poco la
example,
identificación
it's
de
a little
estos
bit more
productos que son
complicated to
importados.
identify these products
Pero hemos
that are
trabajado una
imported, but we
lista
have
de
worked
códigos
on a list
arancelarios, ¿no? Hemos
of
hecho lo posible por
codes
manejar una lista
that
única
would be
entre
able to
Bolivia,
have them
Uruguay
on
y
a
Perú.
unique
Y
list
creo que la
between
mayoría de
Bolivia,
los
Uruguay, and
países han
Peru.
hecho lo
And
mismo,
I think
están
that the
con una
majority of
lista,
countries
tienen
have
una
been able
lista
to
de estos
develop
códigos
a
arancelarios que pertenecen
similar
a
list
productos que pueden contener
that
COPS. Creo que un
identify these
resultado
products that
de
contain
este
POPs. And I think
proyecto
that
de
one of
Global
the
NIP
results of this
puede ser la creación de
global
una
NIPS
lista
project is
de
perhaps
códigos
the
arancelarios de
generation
productos que pueden
of a
contener
list
COPS,
of
¿no?
codes of these
Considerando que casi que la mayoría
products
de los
that can
países pues
contain POPs.
están trabajando con sus
I think
códigos,
that the
entonces creo que
majority of
podríamos
countries
llegar a
are
una
working
lista
on their
uniformada
own list. I think
de
perhaps
estos
we can
códigos.
come up with a
La verdad es que
uniform list
es muy
of these
importante.
lists because that
Se
is
habla
very
mucho
important.
también de que los países mencionaron que
I
el
think
problema
that
está
it's
en que
also
muchos de
important. The
estos
countries have
productos,
mentioned that
pues en su
many of
etiqueta no
these
mencionan si
products
contienen o no
on their
contienen
tags do not
COPS.
mention that they
En algunos casos,
contain
pues hemos visto que hay productos
POPs.
que
In
sí,
some
sobre
areas, we have
todo
seen that
en la ropa
products do contain them.
de
For
outgear, las de
example,
exterior,
on
¿no?
the
En algunos
external
casos hemos
clothing,
visto que
this
algunas
outward
marcas han
gear, we have
incluido
seen that some
información al
brands
respecto de
have
libre de
included
PFAS.
information with regard to
Y estamos
PFAS.
avanzando en eso, ¿no? Pero
And we
mientras
are
tanto,
moving
o sea,
forward
aunque
on
los
this, but
países,
I think
como lo decía el Dr.
that the
Ramesh y
countries, as well as
también
Dr.
algunos de
Ramesh
los
has said,
participantes, o
as
sea,
well as some of the other participants have said,
sí, en el caso de que
in the event
reglamentemos
that
la importación
we
de
are
productos
able to
con COPS,
regulate
pues las
the
aduanas se verán en la
importation
necesidad de
of
validar
these
que esta
products,
información es cierta, así que
customs would
necesitamos
need
también
to be able
trabajar
to
en las
validate this
capacidades
information, and we
laboratoriales
need to work
para
on,
poder
for
analizar
example,
el
strengthening
contenido de COPS
laboratory
en estos productos que
capacities to
son
be able to
importados. O sea,
analyze these
es un
products and
camino largo
identify
que
the presence
tenemos por
of
recorrer,
POPs. It is
pero
a very
por lo
long
menos
road
por
that we have to
ahora, lo
walk
importante es
still
que seamos
for now,
capaces
but
de
it's
identificar
important
esos
to build our
productos que se
capacities
están
to be
importando y
able
que
to
pueden contener
identify
COPS.
these products that
Y
are
en
being
el caso de
imported
los
that can
países que
contain
son
POPs.
importadores,
And
pues
in
también
the
lo
case of those
importante
importing
está
countries, it's
en
also important
identificar
to have this
estos residuos una vez que
identification
entran
of these
a,
residues once they
perdón, a estos
enter,
productos una vez
or
que
to
entran a la
identify
corriente de
these
residuos, que ese
products
es el
once
mayor
they
reto para los
enter
países
the
de
stream.
economías en desarrollo, ¿no?
I know that it
No
is
es
a
en sí la
challenge for
fabricación,
those
es en sí cómo
countries with
manejamos,
transitioning
cómo identificamos
economies, but we
estos
have to look at
productos
how
con
we
COPS.
can
Y
manage
también para
and
eso
how
es
we can
importante
identify these
desarrollar
products
capacidades
that have POPs,
laboratoriales.
and
Eso por un
also
lado.
to
Por
perhaps
otro
as well
lado, el tema de las bases
strengthen
de
our
datos.
laboratory, our lab capacities, as well
Como
as data
mencionaba, algunos países
processing.
la
As
información
we've
está
mentioned,
dispersa.
some countries,
Existe, pero
they
está
don't have
dispersa. En otros casos, la
very
información se está generando, pero
clear
no de la
data, and
manera
a lot
completa,
of
¿no?
countries
Hablaban
we
para el
have
caso
data
del
that is
inventario
produced but in a very unclear, very
COPS no
incomplete manner.
intencionales,
For example,
que la
regarding
información
the
pues no
unintentional
siempre se puede
POPs,
lograr
the
un inventario
information is not
de COPS no intencionales al
always
100% y
found
es totalmente cierto porque
Es
to
información
be
muy, muy, muy
100% complete, but it's
específica.
very, very
Pero sí nos
specific
hemos dado cuenta
information. But if we
que en el
haven't
caso de
realized
algunos
in the
países,
case of
bueno, es una
many of the
recomendación, creo
countries,
que
it's
se
a
puede hacer.
recommendation. I think something that we can do.
Nos hemos sentado con el Instituto Nacional de
We
Estadística,
have
por
looked at
ejemplo, y les
our
hemos preguntado
National
si es
Statistical
posible
Office and we have
modificar sus
asked them if
encuestas
it is possible to
económicas, las encuestas de
modify
hogares,
their
para poder incluir cierta
economic
información
surveys to
que
include this
necesitamos
type
para
of
nuestro inventario
information that
de,
we
por
need to
ejemplo, de
develop
costos
our
nacionales.
inventories, for
Y nos han
example,
dicho
of
que
the
no hay problema, que
unintentional
se puede
POPs.
modificar
And
esta
they have
encuesta.
not
Entonces, creo
identified
que
any problem
una
with doing that. They have been able to facilitate. So I think
estrategia
that
para
is a
ir cerrando esas brechas
strategy
de
that
información
we can use
es
to close that
sentarse
information
con
gap.
esos
Perhaps
generadores
sit
de
with these
información, con estas
generators of
instituciones que
information
tienen sus bases de
and
datos y
with
solicitar
their
ampliar
networks and
esos
ask
datos
them
que
to
son recopilados
broaden
para poder
the
así
data that they
cerrar esas
are
brechas de
collecting
información.
so that
Por
we can
ejemplo, también
close
hay
these
países
data
que
gaps. For
cuentan con su
example, there are countries that have
registro de emisiones y transferencia de contaminantes,
registers
los
on the
PRTR. Estos
transfer of
PRTR
different
también pueden ser
contaminants,
modificados
the
para agregar cierta
PRTR. This can
información que
also be
necesitamos, que es
used to get
específica
information
para
that
los
we need
inventarios,
that is
¿no? Muchas
specific for
veces,
the inventories.
por ejemplo, en el
Many
caso del
times, for
inventario
example, in
de
the
COPNIS,
case of the
el tema, podemos
inventory
en
of
el
the
anuario,
COPs,
por ejemplo, en el
with,
Instituto Nacional de
for
Estadística,
example,
tiene la
the
información
National
de
Statistical
producción
Office
anual,
has
pero no
information
sabemos la
on
tecnología
production,
en
but
sí de
we
la
do not
industria.
know the
Entonces,
technology that
esa
exists within the
información
industry.
específica
So
puede
this
ser obtenida
information,
a
this
través del
specific
PRTR
information
o
that can
también
be used from the
del
PRTR or
informe de operación
also
anual
from
que las
the
industrias presentan
national
ante el
reports that
Ministerio
these
de Ambiente en
industries
cumplimiento de
present
sus medidas de
annually as
mitigación
well
o de
with
cumplimiento ambiental.
the
Entonces, estas bases
national
de datos
compliance on
existen,
environmental
¿verdad?
matters
Están
can be
dispersas,
used. So the
pero también
existence,
nosotros nos
the
podemos
data
sentar con
exists and it
ellos
is
y les podemos
dispersed, but we can
pedir
work with
apoyo
the different
en
agencies
solicitar
and
esta
ask for
información que
support
hemos
to
identificado que
getting
esté
this
faltante,
information so
pero
that
que
we
ellos
can
pueden
identify
fácilmente
what is
recolectar.
missing
Y
that
creo
they
que
can perhaps
la visión de
easily
los
collect. And
países
I
debe
think
ser hacia,
that among the
quizás es muy
countries,
utópico, pero debe ser hacia una base de datos
we can
de
work
inventarios,
towards
¿no? Que incluya todos los inventarios de todas las
inventory, a
sustancias,
database inventory that
incluyendo
contains
los
all of
COPs,
these
¿no?
substances,
Donde toda esta
including the
información que
POPs, where
necesitamos
all of this information
sea
that we need
recopilada en un solo
can be
lugar.
collected
Eso
in
creo que puede
one
ser una de
common
nuestras
area.
visiones,
I
un
think that
mecanismo
perhaps that could be
nacional
one of
de
our vision,
información
one
acerca
of our
de
national
COPs.
mechanisms to have
Y creo que eso
information
sería todo por
regarding
mi parte.
POPs.
La verdad es que ha
And I
sido
think
una
that would be
jornada
all
muy
on my
interesante. Hay mucho
part.
que
It was a
decir,
very
pero muchas gracias a
interesting
todos
meeting. I
por
have
su
so much more to say,
participación
but thank you so
y
much
sus,
for all
sus
of your
reflexiones.
participation and your reflections.
Thank you very much, Marcia, for your final comments and insights. And I would like to express big thanks to all of the panelists and the countries today who joined and who stayed with us, despite that we over-limited the time quite a lot. But it was a very insightful exchange and a very insightful discussion with 9 countries and 3 experts. I think that was a great challenge, but also a big source of information. So thank you so much, and we'll be sharing this video records and also some of the slides. If countries would not mind sharing the slides, we will reach out to you separately before we do so. We'll be sharing this by email as a follow-up and also on the website of the project. Once again, thank you to all of the countries who presented and shared the knowledge with us, and thank you very much to the experts who kindly stayed with us so long. Thank you so much, colleagues, and looking forward to see you again.
Thank you. See you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye to all.
Goodbye.